Ladies and gentlemen, we are now gathered to induct the newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, but most importantly, maybe our biggest ambassador ever in the sport of wrestling, but especially backyard wrestling. And ladies and gentlemen, I know many people are going to have their comments. Many people are going to want a higher score on their match. I'm sure people that have been on this platform will want to have their say. But hang on, because I really believe that this very well could be my biggest and most important speech yet for anybody that is in our Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And I could not think of a better person to be the first member of our eighth class. And I'm pretty sure that, unlike last night's guest, he won't turn down being inducted into a Hall of Fame. But, ladies and gentlemen, I want to start off when it comes to our guest here tonight. And the two things that he said stood out most to me in that backyard wrestling is an art, and it's the testing lab. And we think about our sport of wrestling. We think about all the people that come up in professional wrestling, the underground, and the independents. They have to start somewhere. And they all started, in many cases, in the backyard. And there is no better person who knows that journey than our guest and our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, because he's been going strong since, let me get this straight, 1997 for our audience. And let's think about the days of 1997. America Online, Instant Messenger, right before then President Bill Clinton said, "I did not have sexual relations with Monica Lewinsky." Although, if you think about the state of world politics, that wasn't so bad. Maybe we should go back to those days. But we did kind of see a touch of that in the world of wrestling as we were kind of about to be on a new dawn of an era. The Attitude Era, the New World Order, D-Generation X, a guy named Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, and maybe a year or two later, some guy who just interviewed Mr. Dragon, the Nemesis James Taylor, was born in the world of wrestling. But that's where the California Kid, a.k.a. Copper Dragon, got his start. And in many ways, he got his start with a company that really truly is the standard bearer, the flag waving company for backyard wrestling as we know it in GWC. GWC on its YouTube channel, for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, has garnered, let me repeat, 4.14 million views. Let me repeat that, 4.14 million views. I would just be happy with 1,000 views, maybe 10,000 views. I might be pushing my luck. But GWC has stood the test of time and has 4.14 million views to date. And it's even put out together some big names, some big stars you've heard of. Oh, how about a guy named Skrilla? He's had a big following. He had a couple of wars with Mr. Dragon himself at the later years of GWC. Maybe I won't bring up Xavier Thorne because he's still a Battle Zone World Champion. I'll leave him out later on. But also maybe his greatest moment, his greatest protege, a woman named Shalance Royal, who was once upon a time known as Rookie Royal. And she was, only by the way, a part of a Nightmare Factory you probably heard of that Cody Rhodes used to run. And what a small world the wrestling world is, because I actually know somebody who was in the Cody Rhodes Nightmare Factory a year after Miss Royal. And that was none other than my good buddy, also from the state of California, also from San Diego, Ishmael Vaughn. What a small world wrestling is. And that's why our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame is truly about all wrestling matters. But when I think about his career, and I know people are going to want to get the comments in, hang on tight. This is important. He truly is the master of backyard wrestling. He was California dreaming. He kept those ladies screaming. He was the backyard wrestling demon. He didn't care if you were plotting or screaming. But get ready to hurt for those stars when he rates you a match, because that's what he's been doing, and he's been doing it all through up and down the United States. And He, in many ways, has become our official scoring system of the world of wrestling. And we think about so many people that have come onto this platform. It is a long list of people. Some might have grievances, although I'm sure CJ Black, the good guy, might be the one guy that doesn't have any grievances with our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. A rare thing for Mr. Black, because I've known him now for over a year, and he's actually one of the few in the rarefied air that got those 7 stars. But many people on this platform have had their matches rated. After all, there is a guy that's the reason why I'm speaking to Mr. Dragon right now, the Nemesis James Taylor. One of the most recent reviews for Mr. Dragon, his match when he worked at a company once upon a time and started with a T. Omen Black, the hardcore god, the boogeyman of the Midwest. As a matter of fact, he had a few matches rated by Mr. Dragon, and one of those matches with Matthew Forsaken, We're All Forsaken, actually on TikTok has 3,300 views. Not too bad. Sean Jovi, the resident rock star, Sportswire Radio's rock star, everybody's favorite rock star, almost like everybody loves Raymond. Nicholas Crenson, what does he go by these days? The destructive Jack Delta, my friend, your friend, one of my all-time favorite people inside and outside the wrestling ring. Jacob Collins, although his name gets mixed up time and time again on this platform. Soldier GP, the popular heel monster, the IMF champion of the world. One of my very dear friends and one of the people responsible for giving me the opportunity to have interviewed and become friends with Jimmy freaking Controversy, Gabe Sayers, Mikey Anarchy. I'm sure I'm not surprised that in a way that Mr. Anarchy was reviewed by Mr. Dragon. He can appreciate a light tube or two, or maybe how you can play connect the dots with Mikey Anarchy's back like we did here on this platform. Kodak Kid, the picture of perfection. And oh, how about a guy that I guess is the only person to have ever turned down the induction of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame? And I'm not sure, does he still go by Craven Rage, or is he a figment of my imagination? And a who's who of other people that I've left out. And many throughout the yard have had their matches reviewed. And that's where, ladies and gentlemen, our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, in some ways, is maybe given us his biggest achievement, because it's with his matches, his views, his commentary that not only gives us our own Dave Meltzer, but also can help all of us learn and understand what this sport has to offer. And when I think about the journey of our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, 27 years in this crazy world, the money that's been spent, the miles that's been put on the road, and everything else in between, he is truly the definition of the term all wrestling matters. And, I was thinking about this here for our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And I had said this when the man that turned down the induction last night on the air, that I was reminded when I was at the wedding of my own mother, and I have certainly congratulated her, and I obviously gave a few words, though I don't think it'll be as meaningful as tonight's words, but it reminded me of the place that I need to be is kind of in the place that our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame has been in for the past 27 years. And that's been with the family of the backyard wrestling community here in the underground and elsewhere, because truly what this man has done, he has tried to foster a family, a positive mindset. He has always talked about the words go hard or go home. And truly all of us here, whether we're in the back, whether we're doing this here, whether watching matches, interviewing people, and most importantly, the journey of so many people, whether you love them or hate them here, that come on this platform, they've all done it because they truly love this sport, and they do it because they don't just go home. They go hard. And as a matter of fact, they're not so much home at all. The hours that is spent, the gas, the money, the away from work, the sacrifices, and that's what it's all about. In many ways, as one of our Hall of Famers has eloquently said it best, and I use it every time I'm on the air, in the great Hillbilly Tilly, who was obviously a man that had his own moments out there and kind of rivaling GWC, not too far away from Mr. Dragon, where he cut his teeth. And he said, true backyard wrestlers do it for the love of this sport. And there's no denying the fact, ladies and gentlemen, that Copper Dragon has done it, and he's gone above and beyond the means. And ladies and gentlemen, I wish that I could give you a 1, 2, 3 hour speech about Mr. Dragon because truly he deserves that. He deserves everything that he has been given and maybe given back tenfold. When I think about everything that this man has put into his life, even a thing that he was a part of called the GBYWN. Oh, my old buddy Rad Dad Radley Belmont, certainly a man that Mr. Dragon knows very well, and all those different people I'm sure we're going to get to. But there's no denying the fact that we have many people in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. As a matter of fact, one promoter has continued to say that there's 70,000 people or too many people in there. But the facts are, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that we get almost every single person I can think of that has gone out there and put their life on the line, has put their blood, sweat, and tears into this sport to not only be in our Hall of Fame, but to be recognized every single day. And today, ladies and gentlemen, is a celebration of a man that I like to say is the ambassador of backyard wrestling. And since our guest is a member of the GWC, and he's also a man that's also set his own standards with our 7-star ratings. And like I said, I'm sure you're going to have some complaints about that shortly. But since he's from the beautiful city of San Diego, California, in many ways, I look at Copper Dragon as our own version of Mr. San Diego, Mr. Baseball, Tony Gwynn. Tony Gwynn was arguably maybe my all-time favorite baseball player as a kid growing up in Brooklyn, New York. Brooklyn, New York, and San Diego, California. What would they have had anything in common with? I was a Mets fan. He played for the Padres. He killed my team every time he was up at the plate. But Tony Gwynn, in many similar ways to Copper Dragon, always did it with a smile. He always did it with class. And he always did it to represent not only the city of San Diego, but the city of baseball. And ladies and gentlemen, Copper Dragon, for 27 years, has represented the sport of wrestling, whether it's as a filmmaker, an interviewer, a wrestler, now in his greatest role yet, as with the Copper Star ratings. There is no denying the fact that Copper Dragon very well is the definition of Mr. Backyard Wrestling and an ambassador of our sport. I could go on and on and on about Copper Dragon. I know many of you are like, Tom, already get to the point, but most of you listening are in the Hall of Fame, so you kind of know how these things go. And as your master of ceremonies, your host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the #1 global radio station, where all wrestling matters, and your voice of all wrestling, it is my absolute honor to induct Copper Dragon into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame as our first member of the 8th class. But before I do that, Copper Dragon, I don't know how often you've watched these things, but I have to give you an introduction that I'm sure you probably haven't gotten in GWC. You probably haven't gotten in the many states that you've traveled to in the yard, the miles you've put out there, and your own rating system. Because, again, obviously, your way you do these things now, certainly you might have that Mamba mentality. Certainly, you might have reviewed some movies, you've directed some movies, you've done a number of different things. You've dealt with, obviously, Shiancé Royal, you've dealt with Skrilla, you've dealt with Mike Cross, you've dealt with Fury, you've even dealt with James Taylor on the Nemesis sessions last week. But there is no other way on this platform than we introduce our guest, but also, most importantly, introduce our newest members of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. Ironically enough, many who you've reviewed a match of, with an introduction that I'll guarantee you nobody, whether it's in this sport, whether it's on a podcast, on the radio, gives. So it's time to do it because obviously I'm going to try my best to get 7 stars on this podcast, although something tells me 5.8 is the minimum. I'm sure Mr. Dragon will give me maybe 5.7 or a 5.6 because he was like, Tom, cut to the chase already. Let's get to it. But I'm going to do it because I don't want to get that 5.6 or a 5.7. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my absolute honor to induct the newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame, our 71st member, our first member of the 8th class. He is the ambassador of backyard wrestling. He is Mr. 7-star. He is the host. He is the man behind the Copper Dragon's Copper ratings. He is also the creator and founder of the GWC. Let's get right to it. the Sports Report. Number one. Global Sports Show. The newest member of the Sportzwire Radio Hall of Fame. Our first member of our 8th class. Our 71st member. You once upon a time knew him as the California Kid. Now you know him as the host of the Copper Star Ratings. Simply put, his name is the Dragon. Ladies and gentlemen, we now enter the Dragon, and congratulations, my friend. You're the newest member of the Sportzwire Radio Hall of Fame.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I am supremely humbled by that amazing introduction. Thank you. Thank you for this. I'm excited. A lot to talk about today.
Oh, my goodness. I mean, we could do a book on you. I'm surprised nobody's approached you to do a book on your journey, because seriously, you've done filmmaking, you've done documentaries, you've obviously had a decorated career in the squared circle. You've now had to put up with most of my platform and many of the wrestlers on here that, can you give me a 6.9 instead of a 6.8? And you're kind of like our version of Dave Meltzer, but obviously, all kidding aside, it is an absolute honor to have you. I know a lot of people want to talk to you. I'm going to get to people. I'm sure people are going to want to come on and say hello to you, but I want to ask you the question I always do when I open things up for everybody that's inducted into the Hall of Fame. I didn't even want to wait for it. I didn't want to ask you to come back on, because I really feel like, to me, for 27 years, you've been doing this and you deserve it. And I always say, to quote you, we had to either go hard or go home. And that's why I wanted you to be into the Hall of Fame right away. Not even wait. You know, some people in sports, they have to wait years to be in the Hall of Fame. Not in this case. So I want to ask you the obvious question, Mr. Dragon. What does it mean to you to be the newest member of the Sportzwire Radio Hall of Fame?
It's one of the things that I find like most validating. And the way you do it is done right. I am validated. I just feel much more validated. I feel like, like definitely this is the right platform, because I wholeheartedly agree with all wrestling matters. And I feel just validated and humbled. I just can't express the appreciation with words. I just, man.
All right. Well, I definitely, first of all, I want to thank you for everything you've done, really, for 27 years. And I meant to, I don't know if you were a Padres fan or not even a baseball fan, but you do remind me of Tony Gwynn, in the fact that Tony Gwynn, he was Mr. San Diego. He meant so much to the Padres. He meant so much to the sport of baseball. He always had a smile on his face. His teams weren't very good, except for, a couple years. And, he was really the ambassador of baseball, and he really kept baseball in San Diego. And San Diego is obviously a city that's lost some sports, the Chargers and the Clippers once upon a time. And I feel like you, for 27 years, have been our ambassador. We've went through a lot of ups and downs in the sport of wrestling. We've had people say this. We have the quote unquote holier than thou pro wrestlers and indie wrestlers that try to typecast us and label us. But you've been that one tried and true thing. No matter what, you've stood the test of time, and you've waved the flag and made sure that backyard wrestling would always have that one voice that would make sure that we were all right. We always had somebody that was our ambassador. And I just want to, extend my appreciation. I've only been covering wrestling for 4.5 years, which is still a long time, but still the facts are is that for what you've done for this sport, I really think that we should celebrate everything you've done. And today, to me, is a celebration, not only for backyard wrestling, but really for you and what you've done for 27 years.
Thank you. I do it because, again, I love it. And I know that everyone out there loves it. well, as we get in this interview, I mean, we're going to touch on that a lot, just like, what it really means to be a backyard wrestler. And the magnitude, what you're talking about, the magnitude of that. Like, I have stuck with it for so long, and I try to be the best ambassador of it because of the stigma that it carried for so many years. And every pro locker room I've walked into, and every professional person in the industry I have had the pleasure of interacting with, I have like represented backyard wrestling to the best of my abilities, and a lot of it, yeah, we will get into,
Oh, we're gonna get into it. I have no doubt.
yeah, we're going to get into what's starting everything, but that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to I personally always saw, is in my days of just even my earlier days, I always saw that backyard wrestling needed something to unify it. And the thing is, Tom, we're a culture, man.
Oh, I
We
feel it.
are a
I
culture.
feel it. You know what? I really feel like, people. I mentioned I'm at a wedding yesterday, and people were asking me, "Oh, I hear you're in wrestling," and I say, "Yeah, backyard wrestling." And people are kind of like I'm explaining it to them, and I personally feel like that it's. I don't want to say that I'm carrying a torch, but I feel like it's almost my responsibility every single day to be on Sportswire, to give somebody a platform, even if only one person watches or listens to it, because I really believe in it. And I believe it is a culture, it is a family. I believe we're all on the same team. And I believe that we're a community. And, I've seen a lot of things in my life. I've been in the world of politics, which is a really dog eat dog, cutthroat, a lot of stupid stuff you hear on TV. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. So I've seen, different things. And I really feel like for the first time, I see that there is the sense of community. I see that there's the sense of family. And I think, to me, we have it here in backyard wrestling. And I say it all the time. When pro guys are not welcomed on my platform, if they're going to go and say things about backyard wrestling, I have said it on this platform. God is my witness. There are people here that have heard me say it. I will say it till the day I'm dead. Only people here are welcomed is about all wrestling matters. So I'm tired of anybody that wants to continue to, if they want to pile on backyard wrestling, you send them to me, because I'll make sure, and I'm with a microphone. You thought CM Punk has been live. You've watched some of these shows on Sportswire, and I'll go get him. So the facts is that, we really believe in that. And it's been my personal mission since 2024, the start of this year, to really take that flag of all wrestling matters. And you've been doing it longer than I've been doing it. And, I just can't extend my appreciation enough of you. And I'm sure that many of the people in the room watching and listening to this will certainly, I'm sure, agree with that.
A lot of the hypocritical nature of a lot of the attitudes, those hypocritical attitudes, come from people who actually were out in the yard, and they get into the pros, and they, for some reason, they get this idea
It's peer
that,
pressure. It's peer pressure. That's
well,
what it is.
they get this peer pressure that they have been participating in something that is considered trash. But I think a lot of it has to do with just a stigma that developed from from the late '90s, early 2000s era, where it was the deathmatch era, and everybody was picking up on a lot of stuff from Japan, a
Yep.
lot of the IWA stuff. People picked up on that, and
And there
a
was
lot.
the old video on 2020 where the kid,
Yeah,
he killed his sister. It was in the living
that was
room.
tragic.
That was I remember that as a kid. It was like, okay, don't do wrestling. That was almost like my parents like, okay, you can't be a wrestling fan now because of what happened. I remember to this day, I still have that ingrained, coming home from school. And it was all over the news that this kid, he was this really big kid, and he killed his little sister because he power bombed. I still have that memory ingrained in my head. And there was a big stigma. MTV did the documentary years ago on backyard wrestling, and there was like this stigma. It was like it really set things back.
The message painted the sport as kind of a stunt, it had the unfortunate circumstances of hitting backyard wrestling. Kind of started to hit the popular, spectrum zeitgeist during the same time as Jackass on MTV started
Yep,
taking off.
I remember
and
that.
it was all seen as a part of the stunt culture, the extremists, the crazy people. And what people didn't know is that there was a lot more to backyard wrestling than death matching. I mean, backyard wrestling, there were different kinds of backyard wrestlers, and but you know, the media didn't pick up on that. And a lot of the stories you'll see from back in the day, and you can look on YouTube all the different news packages and stuff they put together about backyard wrestling over the years. I've seen them all. You know, and I've seen all the documentaries. I've seen everything. I've seen everybody's story. A lot of it just is painted in, you know, the same kind of, you know, media circulation that was going on at the time. And what I've done, I've worked for a long time to try to reshape that. And GWC, the Georgia Wrestling Circuit's mission was always to change the name of backyard wrestling, to repaint it as what it's supposed to be. We tried to depict it as an art form, and we tried to show all the various aspects of that art form. And it was, if I had to discuss GWC in any form or whatnot, it was an exercise or an odyssey in obsession. It was when you watch GWC Intensity and you go to that channel and you look up and you see there's every season of it over the years that we did it, every season of it is different. There is a death match.
Oh,
season.
I watched some of it. You guys had
Yeah.
so many different matches, so many different things. You guys were like Baskin Robbins, 31 flavors for everybody. There was always something.
Exactly.
And that to me is what's good wrestling is always about. It's not just one thing. You have a variety because there's different people that like different things. And I think that you guys did that. And I think that's why you stood the test of time. And that's why you have been our ambassador.
Yeah, we tried to show that in one promotion. We included a lot of different promotions around the state, and the other southern states kind of got involved too. We set out to show that GWC Intensity was this flagship show where we showcased the best of backyard wrestling, whether it's ground, trampoline, whatever. It was all everybody had
talked
their
about
own.
living room wrestling. Even I was like, I forgot about that.
We did that too. Living room. We didn't get to do as much swimming pool as I would have liked to have shown, but we did do a little bit of that. We tried to show every form of it because ultimately, and that did so. I think in the later, probably the 2010s or so, when the popular ROH and stuff and all these in Jersey All Pro started coming off,
GCW,
yeah, when all that started coming in and technique started to become more of a focus, like I talk about New Testament, when the New Testament rolled in, it sowed a lot of chaos in what we were trying to do, and I think that's why GWC just ended up folding so many times and restarting up so many times because there was a lot of internal turmoil and conflict. There was a lot of politics and, what we were trying to do. People started seeing, well-worked, safe matches as more superior to the hard-fought, passionate, beat downs and brawls we were throwing at times. To me, it was all one thing, but to a lot of people, it was two different things or three different things. And I was trying to, some of the people you interview from GWC in the future will tell you of just how I would grandstand in front of everybody and try to hammer in everybody that this is one show, this is one sport, this is one thing we're doing. And there's just different styles of it. It's one spiritual practice. We are the highest form of fandom there is. We're expressing our love for wrestling in our own way.
Absolutely. I mean, and you know what's funny? You said that. I'm so glad. I'm going to put some links up here shortly. I'm going to put some also stuff visually on the share my screen for the audience to go out and follow if they haven't yet already. But to me, I look at it, nobody goes and degrades people who go play pickup basketball still. Nobody degrades people if they're going to play flag football or tackle football. I was a kid, remember playing tackle football on cement. Nobody told me, oh, hey, you're playing tackle football, or I played tackle football in the park, or nobody would decry me for playing baseball in a diamond somewhere. Nobody would decry me for playing stickball. Nobody would decry me for playing tennis or any other sport out there. And to me, I look at it as the same mindset because at the end of the day, and I think we're even more sophisticated. We're more talented than that because all the money that's spent, all the time that's put into it, and we're showing our appreciation, our love for this sport that we all want to be a part of it. And I think to me, the greatest form of athletes, the greatest form of talents to me in my opinion at least, and I'm sure a lot of people would back me up that watch this platform and certainly know you, Mr. Dragon, is in the sport of wrestling. Because we have, I think, those things, and I think that we, should continue to talk about those things.
Yes, and I'll tell you you spoke about the how much time and money's put into it. That's another thing. A lot of people what hurts me the most, what really hurts my heart is when I see backyard wrestling promotions, which I've seen hundreds, and I do mean hundreds of backyard
I
wrestling.
cover a lot of them on Sportswire.
Yeah, they fold. They may. I think the average backyard wrestling promotion lasts anywhere from 2 to 5 years.
It's almost like it's an NFL and NBA career, basically 3 years, give or take.
Yeah. They fold, and what is generally, there are a couple of reasons for a backyard promotion folding, and what is the common reason is that most of the group, like a majority of the guys in a group, whether it's 6 or 10 or 12, some of the guys will start dating the indies and start kind of floating off into trying to go pro. And that's the thing. Back in the day, backyard wrestling promotions did not often assemble based on the fact that everybody wanted to go pro. Some people in the group wanted to go pro. I mean, I remember the documentary The Backyard where they had a couple of guys in there that wanted to go pro, like the Lizard.
Yes, I remember that. I do remember that.
There is that in backyard wrestling, and that does cause promotions to fold because sometimes the group can't replace the members it's lost to trying to go to the everybody will go to the dojo, go to the training camps and stuff, and then they'll end up in the schools, and they'll start and they'll hit the indies, and you lose guys in backyard wrestling, and I've seen promotions fold because the guys just had a falling out. And that happens too. There'll just be two friends end up having creative differences, and one of them happened to be the show producer, and the other guy happened to be the top guy. And there'll be a complete fallout, in the group because then the group starts taking sides, and I've seen that happen. I've seen situations where everybody will just go, there'll be a young group and they'll go to college, and people won't come back or people lose interest, and that's normal. I mean, I've seen, and the thing that hurts my heart the most is when they take down their videos off YouTube or whatever platform they have them on, because the thing is, when someone, and most times it's the person in the producer role, or it's the person who is the editor, and somebody in the group will request that their videos be taken down, or they'll just decide arbitrarily to take all the videos down. It hurts my heart when that happens because they may not be speaking for everybody in the promotion. Because you have to think, one thing I want everybody listening to understand is that a backyard wrestling channel on YouTube is a compilation, a body of work of everyone's work.
Absolutely.
Like when you take down a wrestling match off YouTube, you're taking off your exposure, but you're also taking down that person's match. And if you don't consult with those people, you're taking down people's work, and if they ever
want to snapshot, and it's also a snapshot in time. It's history that you can't get back. That's something that's documented, that's photographed, and to take that away from somebody that worked hard alongside you to have that moment, I think it's intellectually dishonest, and it's almost misguided. I mean, to me, I would want to be able to see those things. And I'm curious on this question before I present a couple things up here. Obviously, if you want to follow Mr. Dragon, Enter the Dragon, all of his social media platforms. And I'm going to have an announcement for his Patreon page in a second. But please support him on all those great platforms. He's done so much for this sport. But I'm curious, do you feel since you got involved in 97, how have things changed? Whether it's for better, for worse? Obviously, YouTube is, I would think, made things a lot better than 97. I would think when you started, it was the days of VHS and maybe a $700 camera that almost nobody could afford, and we were kids growing up. But how do you think things have changed since when you got back, going back in the day and started out there in 97?
Okay, let's hear this. Let's talk about the production quality. Okay, so at the time in the late 90s, early 2000s. The most that was available were the VHS C cams or the mini DV cams, or even the DVD disc cams. I
don't even remember the DVD disc cams.
Those were very brief. I'll tell everybody something. I've worked with every kind of recording medium you can name. I've done it all when it comes to backyard wrestling. I'll tell you, in that day, we started off in 97, 98 recording on a VHS camcorder. It was an old VHS camcorder from the 90s. My uncle gave me that camera, and I will forever be grateful to him because he's the one that got me started on my recording journey of really doing camera work. I'll say this, that putting those, you get a VHS tape. We recorded over VHSs all the time, sticking in the cam, go out there and record, commentating on camera. I mean, those were good times. The hardest thing about that time was you didn't have any kind of like really good streaming, anything to stream online with at that time. I mean,
Oh yeah, because I mentioned that all I could think of in 1997 was America Online Instant Messenger.
Yeah.
The only way you could have maybe got your thing up, I don't know if you had it where you had growing up, was maybe like public access television. If you were lucky,
Yeah,
you have
that
to
was
go
it.
take a class for it. You have to go all the way down to wherever it was, and
Yeah.
maybe they'd give you a slot at like 2 o'clock in the morning. I mean, maybe that's what you get. That's the only way I could think of anybody could watch it. I mean, I suppose there was maybe message boards for tape trading, but I have no recollection of that, so I wouldn't know.
The distribution was limited, and that's good. You know that process. I did that before. I'll be talking about that too. I did the public access route before, and that involves a situation that also involves a little teaser. That also involves a situation in which I ended up working with Jeff Jarrett with TNA early on. But
Oh
we'll get,
wow, okay, I
yeah,
did not know that.
I've been around for a while. I've dealt with a lot of different. I've been in the game. I've been semi in the industry while being a backyard wrestler. It's crazy. But back then, I remember we just had the VHS tapes, and you would have had to go to a public access studio to do it.
Yep.
Now later on, as time progressed, I remember I did get a mini DV cam, and we started recording on mini DV. But the hard part was when we wanted to take the matches from the VHS and transfer them to digital. And oh my gosh, back then that was a nightmare because I had to
that would have. Oh my goodness, you would have had had to have done almost impossible to do. Really, those days,
yeah.
sure.
Oh my gosh, I had to set up 2 VCRs. I remember I had to get different plugs so I can get everything hooked to my computer. Back then they had the S video cables, they had the old cables, and then eventually they evolved the FireWire when they got the mini DV tapes. And I was so thankful when we moved to mini DV. But the bad thing about mini DV tapes, as some of you might know who are old heads, is that, man, some of the tapes were good, some of them were bad. And when you had a bad mini DV and things would it would like the moisture on those 9-micron thick streams of tape that you would have, like sometimes
I think I do remember the film.
Up.
Yes, I remember
Yeah.
that. Yes, I
oh
do.
my God, those little tapes. Sometimes the recordings would not go well, and you would mess up an entire day of recording. Oh, I remember those days. But man, it was so much easier to get your matches online. And what people don't know is that back before YouTube, we used to just upload our videos onto a streaming site called MPEG Nation. And the only way, yeah.
Well, I remember Angel Fire. Did you ever do Angel Fire?
Yes, there was that too. And the only way to distribute back then was to send people the link or code the link into a website back then. And you get the player, and it was nowhere near the quality there is now, because back then it was 320 by 240, and there were MPEG 2s. I mean, we hadn't even gotten MP4s yet. Nothing. I mean, we were still standard definition NTSC standard video 3. At best you may get a 360, a 480 by 360. Little squares. And it was pixelated. God, everybody remembers.
Well, you were good at film. I wasn't. I mean, I vaguely remember the DVD stuff. I have a little bit of a memory of VHSs, but I didn't have any intricacies in doing it. But you were obviously a yarder. I wasn't. And so you kind of had to figure out all those things. And it's amazing. Now it's different. You film your matches and you put them up in, like 4 days, 5 days, they're up, and people can watch them. And if you want to watch the GWC days, you can actually do it right here. And as a matter of fact, you've got a whole list of matches. You got almost 18 years worth, 19 years worth, and it's just unbelievable the amount of content here. This is really, I mean, the definition of what all wrestling matters here in the content. And Mr. Dragon, he has given his life to us, and we want to make sure that we support. Obviously, we have done that here on Sportswire Radio. We've subscribed, and also there's some other links I'll put up in the back in the description, and please support him. So, I mean, obviously, you've done a lot with GWC, and you've had done this now with your ratings for a little while now. But what do you remember about the day, November 4th, 2019? Because that was kind of maybe the important day in the history of the Copper Star ratings there, Mr. Dragon, where you kind of decided, okay, I'm going to go out there and do this. Eventually it's led to where we are now. And talk about why that day was so important to you, sir, on November 4th, 2019.
I come to the conclusion at that particular point that I wanted something to unify. And what ran through my mind, I think, on that particular day? I started to remember Backyard. I think it was Backyard versus the World that Rad Hazard used to run.
Mr. Rad Dad Radley Belmont. He spoke about that a few weeks ago. What a small world. He spoke about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I remember when he started, but I'll get to that another time. But Rad Hazard, I remember he used to do a Backyard Wrestling Weekly show. Where
Sean Jovi, who you've reviewed many of his matches, who's back here Wednesday, he was in that. This is why this is all a small world. I mentioned in my induction about Shiancé Royal and Ishmael Vaughn training in the same place, and Rad Hazard and Sean Jovi and you, and just the stars seem to align. That's what I've learned.
Yeah, so that I started thinking about that, and I thought about all the different groups, and I talked about this on on James Taylor's show. I talked about this on TAF. Is that there's been so many different groups that have tried to unify backyard wrestling under one league banner, and they faced many challenges, and they tried, and no one has yet succeeded in doing so. And there are multiple factors for that, and that is an entire podcast unto itself. But I will
I can imagine
that can go on for hours. But I know a lot of the groups. I named off those groups, but I remember it was during the time I was trying, and I was trying to help Jeremy Letts get his Digital Wrestling Alliance started, because he was trying to do it, and I thought to myself, okay, he wanted me on the match review board for when he would decide the Digital Wrestling Association champions, and I would be on the championship board of critiquing people's performances. And in that, everything just kind of hit me at once. I started thinking, like, man, this new platform, TikTok, is it has real traffic. People are on there, and there's backyard wrestling on there, but I figure, wouldn't it be interesting if I got on there and I started doing actual, ratings on it? And if you've seen my Facebook, some people know I had a Facebook page that had I think I had built it up to 11,000 followers at one point.
Yeah.
And I was doing fight reviews. I was doing actual street fighting reviews, because I knew at the time for years though, a lot of people posting World Star videos and stuff, and people were talking about, people were posting fights they'd see places and things like that. And I started actually seriously critiquing the fights and doing top fives and stuff. And I took that same idea and format, and I said, backyard wrestling, there's a lot that people can improve on their production when I see these matches. There's a lot of things I noticed that I learned as I was doing GWC Intensity that I could maybe offer to everyone to improve. And I said, you know what, I'm going to take my Copper Dragon moniker and use it to try to see what I can do from my platform to help all of you, So I said, I can make it kind of competitive by adding a star rating. We don't have a Dave Meltzer in backyard wrestling. We don't have that. But then I thought I could definitely be a little bit more fair than Dave.
Well,
I'm not
first of all,
going.
you stepped in a ring. Mr. Meltzer,
Yeah,
obviously has never, he may in his mind think that he has stepped in a ring, but he has never stepped foot in a ring, which is why I think you're a little different because when you go out there and critique whether it's a Craven Rage match, if that's a name still exists, a James Taylor match, Omen Black, Soldier GP, Sean Jovi, CJ Black, Jack Delta, Gabe Sayers, Mike Yannick, on and on and on and on, you can at least go in the lenses of a wrestler. You've been in their shoes. So when you say something, when you talk about a move or you talk about maybe something they did or didn't do, or you talk about the overall flow of the match, you're doing it in a way when I listen to you, I'm paying attention. Guys like Dave Meltzer, again, God bless them. I'm not in the business of telling people whether they should or shouldn't listen and follow him on social media, but he's never been in a ring. I'm not going to take him the same way as I'm going to take you, Copper Dragon.
I try to, and that's one thing that did kind of spur me as well as the fact that I could offer something, as far as my own personal experiences in the ring, because I have wrestled like God. I don't even remember how many backyard wrestling matches I've actually wrestled, but I know it's well over 100 or so. It's like I've been in a lot of them, and for those like you're welcome to check out what I could accumulate in my playlist on YouTube as well.
Yes,
But
I'll put that back
I
up on the screen.
I've actually attended professional training schools, and I've actually been to quite a few, and I've learned a lot from a lot of people. A lot of little details I noticed, and I tell people all the time, I'm not with backyard wrestling. I'm not looking for perfect working form. I'm not looking for, because that's not what we're about in backyard wrestling. I'm more so looking for the commitment. I'm more so looking for, are you telling the story you want to tell? Are you bumping? Is there trust? There are some things that I will touch on, like, okay, if you didn't, and this is something that I got on what may be the former Craven Rage recently, is that pre-planning anything, something like a shoot off, like when someone shoots you off the ropes or Irish whips you from the corner, did you pre-plan it? Because that's when disaster occurs. If some of you
Oh,
notice.
you know what's so funny you said that because I sometimes do commentary live on matches and I'll talk with people in certain matches. I'll say, well, did you plan the match beforehand? Did you go over or do anything? And the matches where you can tell had that, those are the matches that were great. The matches that, maybe had some confusion or some non-linear flow, you can tell that those matches were not as structured or as pre-planned, let's
Yeah.
say, versus another match. And I think that's the key for any level of match. I don't care if you're in the pros, the indies, the undergrounds, or the backyard. I even heard famously Lex Luger talked about the fact that WrestleMania 9, his match with Mr. Perfect, they went over, it was supposed to have gone over everything, and Mr. Perfect forgot about all of it and didn't go over the match, or they had to go wing it, and the match wasn't very good. And so it doesn't matter where you are. I personally think in preparation, I personally believe in doing the things to make sure it goes off, and I think that that's a huge part of any match, that why it should be successful, but also most importantly, safety. You talked about things like the Irish whip. You talked about the clothesline. Anything can happen. We're in the ring out there. So to me, pre-planning, I think, is a must for any wrestler, and especially here in the yard.
And going from that, I'll say this: like I always tell people, one of the things to do when, especially one of the things that causes this issue, is when you're on a big card. I've commentated a lot of independent shows. I've worked a lot of pro shows like that were somewhat televised. Here's what happens when you have limited time and two guys are booked together. The promoter just to throw two guys together, and they don't have the time to really plan out the match. I always advise people, and I've advised professional wrestlers this when I've been in the back. I've told them, whatever you do not do any kind of rope sequences, because we don't have time to practice it. We can't go over it. Like, just keep it simple. Keep it the holds and strikes and just straight up simple spots, suplexes, whatever you want to do. Brawl the outside. We can do all. You can improvise a lot of that and get away with it, especially with people who are experienced. However, those rope sequences, anything to do with the ropes, needs to be thoroughly rehearsed. I'm telling you that because a lot of the guys in the independents do not know the call signs, and a lot of the guys, and especially a ton of the guys in the backyard, don't know the call signs. And knowing when to throw them, knowing how to throw them, everything that goes with doing like a drop down, a leapfrog, all that stuff, that has to be that should never be in a situation where you haven't had ample time to prepare. And they can be dangerous too to try to throw that in an improvised match situation. I tell people that, and that's one of the crucial things that happens, and that's why I tell people don't do it, don't do it.
Well,
But yeah,
the old adage is always, well, if you know you shouldn't do it, don't do it. And I think that in a wrestling match, most importantly, those are things. I have a lot of people that want to say hello. Let me get to them. And obviously, if you want to go on TikTok and you haven't yet, go and follow Copper Dragon. There's only one Copper Dragon that gives you that rating skill. He's the official scorer of all wrestling that matters, and especially here in the backyard. He's our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. And after I put some comments on the screen, I want to actually give something to Mr. Dragon, because after all, he's given us so much over the past 27 years. And I eventually have to join TikTok because I was reminded by people, why aren't you on TikTok? And I said, I'm on every other platform that there is. But be that as it may, I want to say hello to our buddy Drake Golddragon from the great state of Tennessee for Resurrection Wrestling. He's the longest reigning national champion. He says, "What's up, Tommy?" I believe I know this individual who might be related to this individual, who I would love to see rate one of his matches, D'Angelo the Flame. He's been traveling all over the place. He's now going to Massachusetts for NEW, New Underground Wrestling. He was in AWL. He was in TBW, obviously, Resurrection Wrestling. He's their internet champion. He's kind of like, I think, the next wave of like the Jack Deltas of the world. And he's basically a great talent to keep an eye on him. Thank you, Mr. Golddragon, for saying hi. My very good friend from the great country out there in the UK. I know you must have fans over there in England as well, Mr. Dragon. Mr. OK himself. How you doing, Mr. OK from CCW? I will get CCW coverage in down the road. How you doing, James Marshall? James Marshall obviously is here, and Mr. Marshall's been rated by you many times. He is really the measuring stick of WC and maybe of the backyard. He says hi, and we say hi to him as well. From the IMF, Mr. Dirty Donnie, who's got his own podcast out there, says 4 up, 4 down. How you doing, Donnie? And he definitely goes all. James Marshall is a tremendous in-ring competitor. Want to say hello to the founder of Tennessee Backyard Wrestling and owner. Congratulations to the guys on their new trophy and their, obviously new sponsor, and want to thank them for their support of the platform. And evening, gents, and obviously TBW is one of the motherships right now, kind of like GWC Intensity. Want to say hello to one of my buddies from the great country of Australia, who was, what's it, 8:55 a.m., Mr. Ace Reed. Ace is the BWU World Heavyweight Champion. He's also the host of the Wired Up podcast. And
I've reviewed one of his matches, I believe.
Yes, I think you did. As a matter of fact, I think you did. And I don't remember if Ace, we spoke about it on the podcast, but Ace will be back on my show probably when the weather gets a little better in Australia, when they restart this. Because now we're going into summer and spring. They're going the other way. So, James is Mr. 6 stars once upon a time. Want to say hello to one of my Hall of Famers, Mr. Justin Parsley, on my knees, not because I'm a sleaze, but giving thanks to God above that we could all be here tonight. Congrats, Copper. Breathe it in. Amen. Thank you so much, Justin Parsley. I'm sure I'll see you Thursday on the show. I'm sure the man that'll say hello to you in a little while, Mr. James Taylor, the reason that we're bonded. Love James Taylor. I love James Taylor anytime he has something to say. Another one of the guys that I would love to see review a match for. He's a 15-year yarder, by the way. And
I got that coming up. I got some coming up for them.
Excellent. And Mr. Jake Matthews is one of my favorites. He's the Born to Battle briefcase winner. He is the best on the card. He's in my Hall of Fame. And speaking of people that you may know from ROEW, Mr. C Money, the brother of Mr. 7-star superstar CJ Black. Want to say hello to Skulls the Soul Hunter, who's wrestled Craven Rage. He's stuck in Chicago. I'm sorry to hear that on train delays. And it's not because the White Sox aren't playing very well this year. It's because the train is stuck and the Bulls were eliminated in the playoffs. So there's no excuses there. But Nicholas Crenson, who I think just goes by simply Nicholas these days, kind of like Madonna, just Madonna. Try to know at least your key spots and the story you want to tell. Excellent. Well said. Very well said. I wanted to give you something, Mr. Dragon, before I pivot and transition, because I know there's a lot to get into, but I formally would like to give you this here, because I want to officially, in writing, in paper, acknowledge you as the ambassador of backyard wrestling. So I want to give that to you. I'll make sure that you receive that via email after we're off the air. And I just wanted you to have something that really, signifies the meaning of what you've meant to this sport for 27 years. You've stood the test of time. You've been there. You've sacrificed your blood, sweat, and tears. You've sacrificed the time from your family, your friends, and you've given so much to us. And I truly believe every day I'm on this platform, I want to give, and I believe it's my mission to give to everybody that goes out there in that ring. And I wanted you to have the first of a few gifts.
Thank you so much. I gotta, when I get a chance, when I get back on here next time, I have like a setup and I'll probably put it on display. I got a lot of stuff I want to put on display in the background. I see some of the guys. They have these nice like backgrounds with their memorabilia up and stuff.
Yeah, well, some of it's probably from my platform. Sean Jovi's got 3 awards from me. I have one of my guys, Van Hansen, out in the great state of Pennsylvania. He's the owner of Amplified Wrestling. He had my thing hanging up. I have guys like Omen and Soldier. They've got it hanging up. I mean, James and, all the other guys that have been on here, Gabe Sayers, and, we'll keep that up for a second. But, and did you always know that you were going to wind up in doing this system? And, but you didn't start right away doing wrestling. You were doing, fights. You were doing, did the Kobe tribute. And then, you decided a few years ago to go and review matches. And how did you find matches? I think that's the biggest question. I'm surprised James didn't ask you that. How did you find these companies? ROEW, WCE, DKW, IMF, TF Crew. And, how did you find these matches to review?
We were like, I would say that it's more something that I've always kind of kept up with because of the fact that there was a time when, like in GWC, especially with BACW, me, Fred Yehai, the Melvin Bell, and some of the boys like Ryan North, we used to take just entire weekends and just watch a lot of what was coming out and watch the up and coming. Like I remember I was mentioning to Jack, like we were watching. Jack was surprised that I knew who he was before, like. I know. I remember when Jack started. Like I was,
wow.
We were watching a lot of these guys when they were starting, and I jogged my memory because I remember Sean when Sean had mentioned the ICW. That it just struck me like Indiana. Yeah, with Castle, Chris Castle.
Yep.
We were watching him back then. We've been keeping up with a lot of people for many years because. Especially being involved with the GBYWN, and you ended up kind of, following the breadcrumbs, around different people. And yeah, I mean, I've been monitoring people for a long time, actually. I know on the reviews, I don't mention this a lot because I most times I don't remember it because I've forgotten more backyard wrestling than more people will ever watch. But it jogs my memory.
I know the feeling, by the way, because all my day, because I have many companies that come on the platform, and all I do these days is watch backyard and underground wrestling because I obviously have everybody on the platform, and I feel if I don't watch it, how can I talk about it? So I certainly sympathize with you.
It's its own universe, and I find myself like remembering a lot of things. Like, I was there, man. I remember like the World Backyard Wrestling Worldwide forum way back in the day. I remember when Rad Hazard began as doing his own like review site, his own. He had started out like working under Claudette and them and all these different people building these web pages where we would keep like do backyard wrestling rankings and stuff. And this is way before GBYWN. This is God. I remember when Rad was doing matches on a grass in a park in Las Vegas.
Yeah, I think I watched one of them actually. I was talking with him, I think off the air about it even. We were actually on Twitter, he just posted something and I actually shared it and quoted him on, and I mentioned the GBYWN. I mentioned it, and we kind of, what a small world.
They were out there bumping on the grass, man. I remember this. Oh God, I remember. I've been around too long, Tom. I've seen way too much, but I know a lot of these guys, and I started like when I started searching because I wanted to do more reviews on backyard wrestling because I knew a lot more, and I just had fun reviewing matches because I had a lot more to offer there. And I started looking up some of who was on TikTok, and I started noticing, oh, I know this promotion, we'll do him. And I started like compiling a little list and stuff, and I started jumping on, and I just started doing them one by one. There's so much to look at and so much to review. And this is before I actually started doing with the copper backgrounds and stuff. I just would do duets, and I started giving my star ratings as duets, and then it kind of grew from there. I started taking my templates from my other reviews, and I started just building from there. And I went to war, but it wasn't easy doing TikTok reviews, because I tell you, TikTok's community guidelines, like, oh my gosh, I went to war with TikTok for over a year. Like,
Really? Okay.
because they I think it was 4 different times over the course of a year that they completely took down and deleted my account completely. And on those 4 occasions, like, I had to go log into a backup account. I had to go to a few key people in the TikTok community, and then I had to appeal to them to talk to the community guidelines people to get them to put my page back up. And I had to do this several times because my strikes were legendary. They were striking me down for violence and stuff, and I had to keep telling them, no, it's wrestling. And then I don't know what happened after the 4th time, but then
that's like me with Facebook. I used to be able
Yeah.
to stream my shows live on Facebook, and all of a sudden I'm locked out of my account on my laptop, and I can't stream live on Facebook anymore. I have no idea. I don't even know what it is. These guidelines are what it is. But it's funny. You spoke about Jack Delta, and he's kind of like the household name. Everybody knows Jack Delta because Jack Delta's been in ESF, he's been in WCEF, and obviously he's made a name in XCW, ROEW, TBW, PWF. He's kind of been the guy that in many ways has done above and beyond what you even did, because he's traveled to so many states. He's wrestled, in so many places. And, guys like him, I think some people give him, maybe some unfair criticism, but I think it's really because of guys like Jack Delta, guys like now Aaron Blaze. I know Aaron's a guy you have not reviewed, but Aaron Blaze has traveled to a lot of states. And, guys like certainly Omen and Black, when they were, Omen and Soldier were in the yard, they're now more underground indie. But guys like that go out there and travel. Anthony Steele is another guy that has traveled. And, there's a lot of people that look at and say, well, they're traveling for different reasons. But the facts are, I really appreciate guys like Jack Delta, guys like Aaron Blaze, guys like Omen Black, Soldier GP, guys like Anthony Steele, guys in a sense, even like a Craven Rage who's traveled a little bit, guys like Jake Matthews who've traveled, guys like Chase Wakefield who's traveled, different people that have gone out there and traveled because they're opening the doors up and giving fans and other people that excitement and buzz in the community. So, I really, really just wanted to signal it out, and, how important that traveling process is. You've lived through it, and it's just one of them things.
It is. Jack has to be one of the most traveled backyard wrestlers I've ever seen. I mean, my God, all the promotions.
He's actually wrestling as we speak for VTW, which has now become like the hot company as we speak. And he had a run in XCW, and he had a run obviously in ROEW. I guess he's still with them, and he's been in so many places. It's like you need a scorecard, but it's.
And here's the thing: I talk about this a lot. I got around most of the southern states, but I never got to do my one career regret. And this will always be a deep regret because I communicated with a lot of these people regularly. I never got to wrestle with a lot of the northern promotions. Like I had an invitation to go to NSW, and I had an invitation. I wanted to go to 2KW and do that.
And you spoke about 2KW on James's show. Yep.
That is one of my biggest regrets, and not getting to do any like stuff in Allentown. Allentown was a big backyard wrestling town.
Yes.
Allentown is, man, there was so much that went on in Pennsylvania.
And Allentown was famously where the Fatu family owned their promotion, actually. That's Allentown, Pennsylvania. Yep.
Yeah, it's such a big wrestling town. And I always wanted to go there, too. And there's a lot of places I wanted to go up north that I never got to go to. My cousin did. My cousin got to meet a lot of these guys, like your Sean Matthews and your David Potters and all these guys, because my cousin T3, who's also a backyard wrestling legend in his own right, we traveled up there and competed at the second Blade event, and he met a lot of those guys. I would have loved to go on along. I forget what I was doing at the time. I may have been a filmmaker in Atlanta. I don't remember what I was doing at the time, but I would have loved to have gone to some of these events, and I may have actually funded that trip for him. I don't remember, but he
You
was
funded a
going.
trip you didn't even go on. Boy, you really are generous. I thought you were the ambassador. You might be getting the Nobel Peace Prize instead.
I do what I can, but I tell you, he went up there as a representative for GWC. I remember we sent CJ Lennon down to Florida to wrestle there. We've been around, traveling. The hard thing about traveling is the time. A lot of us have regular jobs in backyard wrestling. We're not like some of us, finding someone to sponsor a backyard wrestling motion is very difficult.
It's very hard. D'Angelo
Yeah.
the Flame, who's another one of the guys that has traveled, and D'Angelo mentioned this when he was on the show last month. It's like, listen, I'll get to you, but you got to work with me. Whether it's if you're in one part of the country and he's in another part, there has to maybe, if you can't pay for him to come in, at least give him like a room or a board or something that at least, extends that olive branch. And it's so important. Even guys like Jack, Jack's talked a lot about this. He's been on here a couple of times, but even on social media about the fact that, he sacrifices, whether it's with his work schedule or his home life. And, it's a grind. Aaron Blaze was here. He's another guy that's traveled. He's been in Tennessee. He's been in Ohio. Obviously, an XCW run he had Pennsylvania. He's from. He's got his own company. Omen and Soldier have traveled a lot. CJ Black has traveled. Sean Jovi's back to traveling to Iowa. A lot of guys go out there and travel. Chase Wakefield has done it a little bit. So many different people travel. And it's, important if you are the promotion to at least work with the people. Anthony Steele's been another one that's traveled, to try to work. And, because, we're doing this for different reasons. But if you want them, try to go that extra mile and step in. But, you've obviously also had some people that you've been a part of that have gone on and did some bigger and better things. And I spoke about a couple of people in my introduction of you and putting you into the Hall of Fame. Those two names that come to mind certainly is one person that you had a lot of history with, which was Skrilla. And the other person used to be named Rookie Royal was her name, but now she just goes by Shianse Royal. We spoke about her obviously being a part of the Nightmare Factory. And, what set them apart as two people that have gone on to have success kind of under your tutelage almost? Talk to me about that.
Okay. Well, the one thing I will tell you, to get to that level, you have to be, if commitment were an understatement, if devotion, I think Jim Carrey said it best when he talked about the journey to the Oscar. The journey to winning Oscar is a gauntlet of devotion. That these two were ready, and they were ready for that task. To get there, to get to where Skrilla is now, and to have done the body of work that he's done, the one thing that set him apart from anybody else in GWC is his devotion. Skrilla is one of the most devoted people I have ever met, and he's so nonchalant about it. It catches you. It's almost, he's deceptively, devotional to the game. Even when he went pro, he was still doing yard matches and helping the GWC out. He wants to change the face of Georgia independent wrestling, because I'll tell you, Georgia independent wrestling, a lot of the Georgia independents have developed a terrible reputation in the industry in terms of the way they do business. And
I actually, my first ever, you're going to probably know this name, the first ever person I actually interviewed in wrestling came from Georgia, and the name was a guy, Chad Parham. Chad Parham was famously from NWA Wildside. He had, you said you did some work with TNA. He had actually wrestled Jeff Hardy famously on a TNA Impact episode when they were the old days out in Universal Studios, where they were on Fox Sports Net, and he was from the Georgia independent scene, maybe a little, just slightly before you in the scene, but he was a mainstay on that. And I never forget, I interviewed him 4 years ago, and he spoke a little bit about the Georgia independent scene. It's kind of, unfortunately, not the best of.
Yeah, if you ever get and one thing I'm gonna ask to see, would he be interested to jump on here? If you ever get Fred Yehai on here, he can. can tell you.
I am open for anybody. Listen, I've interviewed Dean Allmark, I've interviewed Jimmy Controversy, Rad Dad, and I'll talk to the wall. I mean, I'm a
Yeah,
believer in truly all wrestling. So
he
yeah,
can
whatever you
he,
want.
he can tell you some stories, and you know, like you get on. I've done work with NWA Wildside, but you were talking about the Georgia independent scene, one of a very challenging place
Yep.
to try to take off. The thing that a lot of the people, the bad thing is in Georgia independence, a lot of the independents you'll hear about, they're not necessarily run by true wrestling promoters. Some of them are ran by just what you'll often hear people term money marks. And a lot of people get in there and they don't know how to really do a card or how production works. And a lot of, like, you'll see a lot of low production qualities and a lot of things. And a lot of and the bad thing is a lot of the talent don't understand the value of preserving their work. And if they did know, they wouldn't be so apt to go on these shows, because if you go out, they hype you up to try to put on your best work possible at this indie promotion and wherever you're going to be in whatever little town or county in Georgia you're going to be in. And you do it for a little pay. You go out there, you do these matches, and only to find out that that the person recording on these matches doesn't even know where to set up the camera properly. What like the gain is bad on the camera. They don't have the gain setting right for being inside. And yeah, I'm sorry, I speak like this because I am a production specialist, like
Sure.
professionally.
No,
I'm
these are
trained.
important things. The
Like,
camera angle is important.
yeah,
The way I don't think about those things, but you and even the people that wrestle, it is important because that's the most important part is the visual production. So obviously, that's
yes.
a key factor.
It is, and I'll tell you, the hard thing to deal with, and what makes me grit my teeth is when I watch when I see videos from those shows, from a lot of the independent shows, and the camera set up at the corner ring post where the ring post splits the entire scene, or when the camera is set to a low aperture, or like an F8, and it's just pitch black, and you only see a little bit because of the spotlight on the ring. It looks horrible. Can't see the faces of people in there. Or when they set the camera up so that the lighting is shooting forward toward the camera and everybody's backlit. It's just different things that promoters need to know to make their product better. Like, you got to get somebody who knows what they're doing, who's going to record this stuff. Have 2 camera angles minimum if you're doing these shows, especially your big shows. If you can have a handheld, you can't have somebody on mobile. Get a guy on mobile.
But it's so funny you
Yeah.
said that, as we're speaking with, of course, Copper Dragon, of course, who is the man behind the Copper Dragon 7-star ratings. He is also our newest member of the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. We named him our ambassador of the great sport of backyard wrestling. And my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. You can check us out anytime on YouTube at Sportswire Radio 6579. Hit that sub button for us. We're also at sportswireradio.org. We have an internet radio station. We're 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. You can listen to all of our great content via the Listen Live button. You have a podcast, you have any live music you want to play, you want to be a DJ, you let me know. I do it free of charge on behalf of the community. I take care of all the costs to upload and produce the shows and put them up for the world to see and hear. And thank you for your support. It's so funny that you said it, though, because I can even tell the difference in that with, like, backyard wrestling companies. There are some backyard wrestling companies that have superior video production, WCE, ROEW, TBW, VTW. Then there are other promotions that you can tell that either there's no commentary, the camera angles look a certain way, and the linear flow is not there, but then you can tell that there are companies that do a fantastic job. XCW does a very good job with it. You can tell, like, certain companies that even the video production in the yard is superior than other companies. Like I said, ROEW, WCE, when IMF was in the yard, I would say TBW, absolutely. That's what people may say, XCW, VTW. Those are companies that I say absolutely stand above shoulders in terms of that, even the video production, that digital things you see on the screen. Stuff you'd understand far more than me because you do digital, production.
The presentation counts, and I've said this on my reviews. Presentation does count. Like, the way what you're presenting to us as a finished product. And when I do reviews, Tom, you're giving me your finished product. I'm the consumer of your product that you are creating. You're, rather more so than saying the word product, your expression of backyard wrestling, your art, your
Well, it's like if I go into a store, right? And if I go into to buy items, whether it's a convenience store, a supermarket, and the display, the way it looks in the store, it's not presentable, right? I'm going to walk out and not buy something. So if I'm going to go watch a backyard wrestling show or any wrestling show, right? And there's no commentary, let's say the way the cameras look, or there's no match cards, or there's no anything that tells me anything. Why am I going to watch it? So it's the same concept.
a lot of that goes on, and that's one thing that I do critique a lot is that when I look at a backyard wrestling match and I go to it and I'm watching the screen, is there an opening? Is the opening well edited? Did they put any care into the graphic work? And I'm not against a minimalist approach to it either. Was the opening clean and concise? Did it do what it was supposed to do? Am I getting what I'm supposed to be getting from it? When they get into the show, is commentary clear? It doesn't matter if commentary is there or if they're doing it in post. Is commentary clear on what they're saying, and can I hear it? Do they know what they're supposed to be doing on commentary? Because a lot of commentary get carried away, and I've watched them expose matches, whereas they're supposed to be protecting matches. One of the biggest sins.
You're there to promote and put
Yes.
over the situation that you're in, more or less. Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Sometimes I'll say this. Sometimes a spot is not a botch until the commentary makes it a botch. That's something I want everybody to take home with them. The commentary's job is to sell the match. You're not
Absolutely.
supposed to direct my attention to the fact that something did not go to plan.
It's just like if you went to a show or a concert, right? And let's say the artist doesn't sing the right note or forgets the lyric, right? Their job is to not let you, the audience, know that happened. So as a commentator or an announcer, your job is to be able to take the viewer away from that and not give as little attention to that as possible. So you're supposed to focus on something else or move away from that so the viewer doesn't remember that. Remember, because the average viewer is not going to know what you're going to know inside that ring or as the announcer and commentator. So it's your job when you're out and calling a match to be able to direct, if there's something happen, to direct away from that, or divert would be the better word.
Yes, and some people have gotten this more than often, but that's when I start. When I see something like that, I'm like, "Or what are we doing?" I'm on these reviews, just kind of like, why did you? What? I understand some of the boys in the roster are doing the commentary, and it does hit them as kind of confusion when they see certain things that happen in the ring, or out there on the ground or wherever, and they don't know what's going on, and they don't know how quite to call it. But whatever you do, don't act like you're confused. Just call it
away
as
from it. Yeah, it's like when you're in a match or you're wrestling that match. If something goes awry, you can't tell the person in the ring, meaning the person that's watching it, something happened. You have to keep moving. The worst thing to do is stop. It's just like if you're doing commentary and you tell somebody or kind of hint at what happened. That's the worst thing to do, because that means the viewer picks up on that and you have to move on.
And this day and age, we have such better video editing technology than we had back in the early 2009.
Oh, I was watching some of your stuff from years ago. James Taylor's going to come on here in a few minutes to say hi for the same reason. The video production in 2006, although it's kind of crazy, it's not that long ago. We had good technology, but it's light years ahead.
Yeah.
We're light years ahead now, honestly. We're just light years ahead.
There's so many tools at your disposal to hide a botch. Some of the guys who will probably come on today are familiar with me going into my dragon aspect face, and you'll see the dragon pop on the screen, me and Copper Dragon face, and I'm like, go to replay. And I'm like, replay is one of the most. The WWE uses it, AEW uses it, Ring of Honor. It doesn't matter. Japan uses it. If you have the option to either cut to your second camera angle, if you have
and I've noticed that WCE, I know people say a lot of things about WCE, but WCE's always been good at the replay. They've always, in their matches, they have done a fantastic job with giving you that replay angle. ROEW, I think, has started to implement the replay angle. They're good at it. TBW has been doing that for ages. So those three companies to me stand out most that have been doing. DBW has started to incorporate that. VTW has been doing that. But those are companies that, implement that. And I want to say hello to some people because I know people are kind of chomping at the bit to talk about some ratings. Craven Rage, who I think I might let say hello toward the end of the show. We have about 25 or 30 more minutes with Mr. Copper Dragon. We could keep him here all day, but he's a very busy man. Hello, Mr. Bryce, and hello, Mr. Dragon. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Copper Dragon, for always making my dreams come true and helping me become a good competitor in the ring. And thank you for deserving this even yesterday, and I still have to present you something. And the man that actually is a 7-star superstar, Mr. CJ Black, the good guy. You in a way, I should talk about him for a few minutes because in a way he wants to hear it, and I actually want to talk about it for a couple of different reasons. Because, I want to say I've been saying for about a year, maybe a little more than that his ring ability, his chain wrestling, his overall skills. You talked about everything today in the layout of a match. You talked about everything in pre-planning. You talked about going over things. You talked about what to do and what not to do. People could say what they want about CJ Black inside the ring, outside the ring, his character, whether they like it or not like it. But this is the guy that everything you said tonight, he does it. And not only does he do it, he does it like a 7-star superstar. And you've rated him 7 stars. And, he's one of the few people that you've ever given 7 stars to. And, talk to me because you've reviewed a few of his matches. Jacob Collins, you reviewed his match. I think C-Money, you reviewed his match with him, also his brother. And, this is a guy, everything you've talked about tonight, he seems to have done it. And you would give him, if you were the teacher, you'd give him an A, and you kind of have with 7 stars. And talk about the good guy, CJ Black.
In everything, there is an overachiever, and there are the overachievers that are good sports, and there are the overachievers that are bad sports. But an overachiever, nonetheless. I do that in a little bit of kayfabe, but yeah, no. Even now, I mean, this kayfabe is fantastic. I love it.
I had him here a couple weeks ago. He was great. He was,
he's gold. It's just gold, man. Like he really earns those stars. I tell you. I give him that. I give him 100% more, man. Just always a joy to see his work. But to credit. Now, hold on. Before we still need to give Jack his credit because that was a 7-star match. Yep. Both of them were 7-star superstars, in my opinion. But, obviously, in terms of just like overall, like carrying the mantle, this guy is like showing out all the time. So, yes, we'll give CJ Black his credit and his flowers today. But by God, I hope it inspires. And even though he'll discourage this, I hope it inspires some people to reach for the Copper Stars. You can call them my version of the brass rings, but CJ Black is right now the highest earner that we've had on the Copper Dragon.
But you know what I like about him? I'm going to bring James Taylor to say hello in a few minutes. Is that what I like about him is that every match he wrestles, it doesn't matter who the opponent is. Yes, he's beat Jack a few times. He's wrestled JX. He's been in the ring with his brother C-Money in the IMFs, the big venue they have at the Palo Community Center, as they've gone into kind of being an indie company. But what I like what he does, and this isn't me talking about the character, what I like what he does is that every match he has, it's an important match, meaning that it's what you talk about all the time. It's not so much about the belt. It's about watching that match, the meaningfulness of it, whether it's the character work or most importantly, the skills. So I feel like what he does best is that maybe I'm not getting a CJ Black match every week, but when I get a match of his, I have to put all my stuff down and go watch him because of what he does in the ring and what he does to be able to talk about all the things that you've talked about in this conversation.
He really lives by one of my mottos, and he lets his work reflect his passion for it. I think that's what attracts all of us to CJ Black is
Absolutely.
that you can see like he loves what he's doing out there. And
he's got a passion for the sport. He's undeniably, people. I wish that people would be like him maybe outside the ring because he really is always thinking about what can I do or what should I be doing. And, guys like that are a dime a dozen.
They are. And he just, like I said, when you watch his match, the details, the sheer amount of details looked at, like if you like different things done, even a drop toe hold is just right where it needs to be. He understands how these things are supposed to go, and it's really something that people can study, and I hope people read. Well, it doesn't matter what kind of backyard wrestling you're doing. Like, yeah, they're doing technical, but that's not what makes it a 7-star match. What makes it a 7-star match is how much care was put into it, from the editing, the way they go into the show. Like, you can look at that Jack Delta match, from the way they started it, the backstory they
Yep.
gave,
The
the
storyline going
the
into it.
weeks of work that led to it, all the buildup they did for the blow off on this thing, the way they went into the way they tied up, the initial tie up was good. Everything they
It
did,
meant something. There was
it meant
meaning
something.
to it.
They made it mean something. And it doesn't matter if you're out there just doing a match on the grass, or if you're, I mean, anything,
Well, what they
just
do
make it
good there,
matter.
what they do a good job that there is that their storylines mean something. They're giving you
Yeah.
a linear flow. So, yeah, maybe they don't have, 4-hour shows. And I want to say before I bring James on, thank you for saying what I have felt a long time about backyard wrestling shows, or YouTube shows, as some people refer to them. I don't think 4-hour shows or 3-hour marathons are really good for the overall product. I know for you it's bad for editing, but I don't think that the average viewer has that attention span to sit there and watch a WrestleMania length like show every 2 weeks. And I
Yeah.
think I know, obviously, now I know a little bit about this. I know it's going to take way too long to put that show up. It takes days to edit it, weeks to edit it. And there are some companies that on this platform that do that. And that's why they kind of are behind in their scheduling of shows. But in terms of just, I think for the average viewer, I don't even mind if you're putting 30 minutes together out there. AWL does a great job with that. ROEW does a good job with that. IMF, when they were putting shows together, they would just put matches. I think even TBW gets it right because they do just an hour and 20 minutes. So I think, to me, I don't think 3-hour shows are really a good thing every 2 weeks to put a show out there, because I just don't think the average viewer has that attention span to sit there the entire time. Well, thank you for saying that, brother, because I've been saying it for weeks. But if I say it, I'm going to get canceled off the air. You say it, at least you're a 27-year veteran who's been in the ring and also knows a little bit about production and, video editing.
Yeah, it's just gonna, like I said, it's time. Hey, James, what's up, man? It's time, man. Like, because people, when you put up those shows, yeah, I mean, maybe on the off chance somebody will have the time to sit up with their snacks and
It's
everything.
just the
You know,
wrestlers that are on the card that are
yeah,
realistically watching the 3-hour
yeah,
shows. Let's
like
be
you
honest.
gotta break it down. You gotta just hear the individual matches, not just for archival purposes, just for the casual viewer who may find interest in the people, that are on the marquee or the
And guys
graphic
like me and you, by the way, I'm going to say hello to James Taylor. So, guys like me and you who cover these matches, you obviously do a far better job than me, because you obviously do the commentary in your own way, and I have to interview these people. 3-hour shows, it's too long. I can't sit there for 3 hours and watch everybody. You give me an hour, I can do an hour, 90 minutes, a little pushing it, but like, give me the matches at a time. Give me 30 minutes. NEW, Jake Matthews company does a great job also. They put 20-minute, 30-minute episodes. Okay, I can sit there while I'm eating at 1 o'clock in the morning to try to, have a little bit of a, downtime to kind of get ready for my next show. Great. You give me 20 minutes like CJ's company, ROEW, give me that one match, maybe a promo with it. Excellent.
yeah,
Even TBW, at least they give me an hour. Okay, I got it. It's like, the point is, I think the longer you go, you lose the attention span. WC's, I'm going to give them credit for Dead or Alive. The whole show was 2 matches, but I got to watch the entire thing. That's enough. That's it. Got to the point.
it's good. Yes,
And speaking
yes.
of people that always get to the point, the reason why I'm interviewing Mr. Copper Dragon, James Taylor, the nemesis here, obviously, James, and I'm sure you've heard a little bit here. I wanted to, while we have a chance for a little while longer to have Mr. Dragon, wanted to say hello to you and see what was on your mind.
Just stopping by, I guess, and just congratulate you, Mr. Dragon,
Thank you.
for this opportunity and everything, which is really good. Glad to see you talking more for the wrestling
There you go.
community. And there it is. There's a certificate of appreciation. So it's always good to see people get recognized for their talents and what they do. And I like this guy a lot. He was a good guest on my show.
Oh, I
And,
said, I'm going to say it on the air. I'm going to basically maybe break the fourth wall and do a pipe bomb. Mr. Dragon, you were one of James's better guests in like ages. I have to say, I was actually out and about, and I actually stopped what I was doing. And I was like, I stopped where I was literally the entire interview and just listened, because it was like, okay, this is what James should be doing when he's on his show. I mean, with all due respect, you bring some certain guys on, and God bless them. I get it. I go through the same thing at times, but that was an interview. Just hearing two veterans just shoot the stuff, and two guys that know things that I'm picking up on, I'm learning. That, James, is one of the best ones you've done. And I don't even remember how long. It was just that good of an interview. I was just like, okay, it was almost like Broken Skull Sessions backyard wrestling style.
It was a good time. It was a good time. I enjoyed it. I always love to talk backyard wrestling, man. Like I said, we two old heads, so we're gonna get up and we're just gonna get right into it. Like there's like I said, backyard wrestling is a culture. And you might as well look at it as for me and him, it's a spiritual practice. I mean, for me and him, it's like. It's like life, you know what I'm saying?
I tell you what, I mean, I'm here every day. Like I said, James, I was saying this to Copper. I was at a wedding yesterday, and my mother being married, and one of the people that I happen to know follows me on YouTube said, I always see you on YouTube, and he was like, why is that? I'm like, well, I do this thing, and I obviously have kind of becoming really into the world of for the past. Even though 4 years I've been doing it with more independent and British wrestling, but really here in the backyard. And I kind of feel like, to me, this is where I'm home. And this is where I should be every day on the platform, even though my voice may not want me to be on every day. But that's kind of where I feel I should be. So I understand it. I really do.
Yeah. And, like I said, it's especially for I've had the pleasure of listening to a lot of both of you guys' casts over the, I mean, man, some of the interviews, I mean, I've enjoyed so many, and yes, I since James here, I wanted to let him know that I've watched that match you sent me. You can expect a review. Wow.
Well, I'm curious to know what your thoughts are. Maybe we get a little tease of it.
Yeah, don't spoil it for us, but if you want to give don't tell us anything.
Let's just say this: was it a thumbs up or a thumbs down in your taste?
No, it was.
No politics on us here, James. Don't. I'm only kidding.
But I will say this: I will give one of the scores one of the areas that I rate in. Like, as a matter of fact, while we're here, I will say this: if I had to, I rank in different categories that I put at the beginning of every review. I'll talk about contact. I'll talk about move variation. And I scored on different aspects of the match. In terms of contact and trust, like that's a 10, bro. Like that's I do 10 out of 10 the subcategories. Then I generally go ahead and round them off to get a star rating. In the 7. So yeah, that in terms of the contact and the trust you guys did out there. Oh my gosh. One of the like I see why you were so confident in this thing. I think everybody's gonna have fun watching this. I am highly gonna recommend everybody go watch this. I mean, I got to do more of Steel's matches. I haven't done.
James, have I watched this match before?
Wait, what match? I sent you 2 matches. Was it mine and
don't
Anthony's
say who
match,
it was.
Or was it mine? Was it mine and Phoenix match from 2004?
No, not that one. Not that one.
Okay.
Don't tell me the match. Have I watched the match?
I'm sure you have.
Okay, then I'm okay. Fair enough. Okay.
But both of them, like you're gonna see the reviews come out in my next set. So that's how much I enjoyed these matches. Like, I'm all about the contact. I'm all about the physicality, and
I am too.
Man, that was it right there, man. I'm gonna people are gonna enjoy this. I'm gonna recommend people watch these matches too because they need to see this.
Let me ask you this, it kind of ties into what you just said. And I realize that I've only got a little bit more time, and we'll see if Mr. Rage pops on toward the end of it. I'm going to give you about 20 more minutes. I realize you're a very busy man, but in terms of just, do you get pressured by wrestlers after you rate their match? Do people say, well, I disagree with, I'm just curious, we kind of joked about Meltzer, and, some wrestlers love him, some wrestlers hate him. But, do you get pressured by wrestlers after you rate their match to change your score? I'm just so curious on that.
I haven't received any heat for any of my reviews. I'm surprised, but
really, okay.
I think it's because the fellas all know that the guys and gals, they all know that, they all hear what I'm saying. I break it down, I explain all my opinions, and when I have been wrong about something, like I always go back and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'll own it. You know what I mean? If I miss something, I miss something. I always go back and I re-review it or I talk about it. But most times I'm very thorough. I go through the matches like with a fine-tooth comb. Like again, like that. A lot of the ROEW matches, they sometimes they are so unbelievably good. I have to sit there and go through them twice or 3 times because I'm just looking for a mistake. I'm just like.
Well, I'm glad you said. I'm glad you said that because I've been basically tooting their horns for over a year. So I'm glad. Thank you for confirming that I have some knowledge. It seems.
Yeah, guys, we're not being bribed to give these opinions on ROW. like none of us are. We're literally telling you watch it for yourselves and tell us and you tell us we've looked at them and we are. I
gotta be honest. I'm gonna say it even further. I love ROEW and even some of our other promotions that we bring on here far more than I do some coverage for like British independent wrestling. And I don't want to like crap on all of them, but like some of it I watch and it's like I'm straining my eyes. I'm like, it's tough. It's like eating a $2 steak if that exists. Although in New York, I think with inflation, it's more like a $20 steak. But the point is that, I really have to struggle. When I watch even a company like ROEW, I don't have to struggle. It's like I'm like there and I'm excited. I really like, even though I'm here because I'm covering the product, this is what it is, but like I really enjoy it as a fan. And I think that's so important that you have companies out there that are like that. TF Cruz, another company you've covered, Gabe Sayers in the past. Gabe is a great guy, and a lot. They're more on the hardcore side, but they do a little bit different. You obviously covered his match with Jeff Nova. Jeff Nova is a great talent. I love watching some of that there. WC's had some great moments, Sean Jovi and James Marshall, Craven Rage and Sean Jovi, Nicholas Crenson and James Marshall. So, I love the fact that there are companies out there that, we can, cover and enjoy more than the independents and the pros. I wanted to ask you this question while James is here, and that you talked about you did some work for TNA and Jeff Jarrett, and I just was so curious on what that experience was like for you.
Okay, so this we were talking about public access. So
yep.
me and the boys used to do a backyard wrestling public access show. We used to also do reviews of Raw, SmackDown. We used to do reviews.
Sure.
This is back in the early 2000s. We were on Cox 18 in Macon, Georgia. Well, it was really in Warner Robins, but it aired in Macon, Georgia. Okay. So during that time, TNA they were trying to build a following, and they had like literally an open line you could call to kind of set up. If you were an organization and you were looking to help promote TNA, you could call them, and they would work. You would tell them what you were doing, and they would, depending on what setup you had, they would send you boxes of merchandise and stuff and promotional materials to help promote TNA.
Pretty cool.
So our show was called Via Critical Submission, VCS. It was me, Big Daddy V, who's a wrestler on GWC Intensity, and Pierre the Pike Harris, another backyard wrestling legend who doesn't get near the credit he deserves or recognition, which we'll talk about him, or I'll see if I can get him on, but he was fantastic. But all of us were on this show. And I made the call one evening to call TNA to see could we get some materials, because we would do these public access shows. I thought I had the right number. I swear. I picked up the phone, I called the line, and Jeff Jarrett picks up the phone.
Wow.
Yes. I'm talking to Jeff.
That's like Jarrett. How I feel when James Taylor picks up my phone.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm like, what is going on? I'm expecting somebody from like their marketing department or something.
Right,
No,
right, right.
no, it's Jeff Jarrett himself. Picks up the phone. Me and him have a conversation. I'm telling him what we're doing and making. You know, I'm telling him we're doing this show via critical submission, and we do reviews and stuff. We like to do a segment about TNA because they used to do the Wednesday pay-per-views and stuff. And
yeah, I remember those. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. I was on the promotion team for that in Macon, and I would go.
Oh wow.
We used to talk. We used to talk about TNA and do reviews of what of how the events went and stuff like that on via critical submission. And I was on the phone with Jeff Jarrett a couple times. I was telling him ask him what they had available because they never were in full stock of the promotional materials. God help me. It's like either they didn't have enough shirts or they ran out of this or that. It's crazy. But yeah, he's really a cool guy. Really one of the unexpectedly very, very accommodating.
Well, I listen to his podcast every week with Conrad Thompson. He's refreshingly down to earth. He's plain spoken. You would think okay, here's a guy that's owned a company. Their family's in the business since I don't know, before World War II, and all the things he's accomplished. And he's just a regular guy, and he just talks to you and he gives you an honest take, but doesn't talk in an arrogant, conceited way. I just find it refreshing. I never would have guessed, honestly.
Not at all. And I really enjoyed working with him in the short time that I did during the promotional period. It was he was very kind, very nice guy, very cool dude. And among probably the top 5 kindest wrestlers I've ever met, in the same categories like an AJ Styles, who I've met on 4 different occasions and worked with.
Well, he was a big part of the old NWA Wildside days in Georgia, so I figured you would have crossed paths with him.
I worked in NWA Wildside a couple times.
So Bill Behrens then?
Yes, yes.
I know Bill Behrens. Yeah.
Me and Fred both know Bill Behrens.
Yep.
Yes.
I've spoke to Bill a few times. Yep, I know him.
Yeah, I don't know if he remembers me, but I did a lot of the announcing. I did some announcing in NWA Wildside, and I used to. Hopefully, if he ever hears this, he'd say, hey, what's up?
Wow, I'll make sure of it. I'll tell you what, I'll make sure of it because we're friends on Facebook.
Yeah, he can't remember, but he definitely has to remember Fred. He has to remember Fred. I would be surprised if he didn't remember Fred Yehi. But yeah, Bill Behrens and all those guys. But yeah, I worked with AJ because he came to my job. I used to work at Fox in Macon, and he came in to promote an event they were holding in Macon, and I got to meet him there. I met him a couple different times. I met him in Helen, Georgia, one time, and he signed my action figure. I met his wife. And that was when his child was just a toddler. I mean, God help me. I met AJ. AJ's one of the coolest guys I ever met. Fred has stories about him too, but AJ was actually kind enough to do a promotional spot for our Backyard Wrestling show, and he did one for BACW. He actually let us air one of his matches on our show as well. Very cool guy. Oh my God, I can't say enough good about AJ Styles. And
I know you met Mick Foley as well. You said you had a conversation with him on James' show.
Yeah, like that was in Savannah, and he was on the set of the Peanut Butter Falcon movie, and I did not know he was going to be there today. I showed up in Savannah, and I was just kind of inspecting the set, seeing how they had everything set up, and I was talking to the director about the way we do backyard wrestling because he wanted it to have a backyard wrestling look. And I got to send you that footage, James. I'll send that to you. I keep forgetting. I'll send you that footage I have of that. But we got to meet all those guys, and Dakota Johnson was there. Jake Roberts, all of them were there. But I met Mick and I shook his hand. I told him I was so appreciative for everything he's done for wrestling in general. And me and Chris and some of the guys, they showed him some of the GWC intensity matches in our presentation. He absolutely loved it. He thought it was he was surprised at how well we did it, and that was for me. That was everything a backyard wrestler could ever ask for. Is having
he was the one guy that. I mean, obviously the Young Bucks, the Hardys made it. James has made it with his TikTok following, but I mean, he was the one guy that I think the greatest underdog to have made it as a yarder to be the world champion. He was, he still to this day is one of those guys that I think never forgot his roots. And I think that's why, he is the kind of person. I have a lot of people that want to get to some comments. So let me say hello to some people. Craven Rage wanted to call CJ Black the Mr. 7-star good guy. Hello to Salastar, Daniel Garcia. Joe Hendry is the Deadpool of wrestling. ABC is a compelling tag team to watch. Thank you, Salastar. If you have not hit the sub button for us, please do so and support GWC Intensity. Joshua Allen, I agree with him, my good friend. I definitely agree with the All Wrestling Matters hashtag, and I can definitely support all wrestling. Absolutely. And I think that Mr. Dragon has been doing that for 27 years. Mr. Taylor has been doing that. And yours truly has been doing that. Sean Jovi, I've been mentioning you throughout the show. So there you go. You're here for the last parts of the show, which is always good. Sup, y'all. Always so good to hear Mr. Jovi. He's going to be here Wednesday night, I believe, around 7:45 p.m. Central Standard Time. Mr. Allen, I'd like to say from the CWA days back in the Memphis territory with Jerry Jarrett, rest in peace. Yes, he passed away not too long ago. With Jeff being a referee and transitioning into an in-ring talent with a baby face for Jeff back in the day. He was so over and even greater. So, his grandmother was actually a promoter. His grandmother started out as a promoter, and he was, I think, working the shows as far back as like 1980 or 79, and he made his debut 38 years ago the other day. So that's just some great points. James, before I ask Mr. Dragon a few other questions, you want to ask Mr. Dragon anything you want to say to him?
I mean, I guess about that match a little bit ago, the one with Anthony is the one I'm thinking you're talking about. That one was a really, a very physical match. I'm actually watching it right now while we're talking, and going back because it's been a while since I've actually watched it myself, and it's just like, damn, Fun fact, we were wrestling. It was 22 degrees that day.
We talked about this 22.
So all that damage.
And conversely, he wrestled a match with Troy Navarro, which has 9,100 views. That was like 122 degrees, Mr. Dragon. He wrestled a match with Mr. Navarro, which was I think in 2000. I want to say 10, maybe 10. That was right, 10 or 11.
That may have been early. Yeah, 20, maybe 20. Maybe a few years later, maybe 2013, 2014. I can't remember when I went on that DPW run. Yeah, that was when I went on a streak in DPW. Yeah,
you were in the Grand Prix tournament there as well, and you had quite a run, and it was quite a match there with Troy Navarro. 9,100 views it got. That was.
I enjoyed working Troy. Troy had amazing timing. Definitely somebody people can look at as Troy Navarro. That whole group was talented. I mean, that's the same group that the Baron of Brutality, Tony James came from, and all these guys. They were really talented, technicians, and they executed well. My second match, my matches with those guys were good. Even with some of my favorite matches with Wild Thing.
I did watch one of those. Yep.
Those were me and him worked together really well. I worked together well with those guys. That was just different. That was more New Testament me than it was Old Testament.
You spoke a lot about that on James's show, the New Testament, the Old Testament, and we spoke in some ways about that. And let me get to James Marshall because James has a nice comment. My exposure with big names was in UPW. Chatted with Big Connor. Yes, I know Connor, and got thrown out of the ring by Robert. Robert Gibson. Why did I not know that after 2 years? The one and only Robert Gibson, of course, the Rock and Roll Express. Even nailing the ring steps on the way out, he asked if I was okay. That's kind of nice. It's almost kind of like Rad Dad's moment when he had with them, not too long ago when he was in the ring out in Albany, New York, a couple of years ago. We spoke about that. I'm curious about this. James didn't quite ask you this question. You've done a lot in your career, but I always ask this question to people, and especially like yourself. And I'm sure there's so many things that come to mind, but throughout your 27-year career, whether it's obviously doing this now is with the 7-star ratings, as Copper Dragon, whether you were the California Kid, whether you've obviously trained people, whether you've obviously even done some film, you've done some documentaries, filmmaking, you've done music videos, you've done pretty much anything there is. You've done promotion work. Is there one or two moments in your career that stand out most?
I'll say that in terms of wrestling, probably the best, the time I actually felt satisfied after a match was like completely satisfied with a match was after the match with Stunt Marshall, who's also an independent talent these days. But if anybody wants to see like me at my absolute best, despite some of the botched reffing at the beginning, just look at the match between me and Stunt Marshall. We went almost an hour nonstop, and it is me at like if in terms of my overall performance ability, like in terms of how like brutal contact can get with me and how tough like two guys can be. That to me was a career accomplishment. That and the match with T3 were some of my favorite wrestling moments. In terms of my actual career, like overall career moments, like making full-length movies was fun as a director. Making it onto IMDb was good as a director, just there's a lot. I mean, I've done a lot. I think
I know
media.
your life is so, I know James kind of gave a synopsis, but your life is so fascinating. You've obviously had this journey. You grew up in San Diego, you moved to Georgia, you get into film, you obviously work and you do some CNN work. You obviously talked about some of the things you did at Fox. You talk about the promotional work with TNA. You've done documentary stuff. You've obviously trained people. You've traveled. I mean, your life is a really fascinating life. And I mean, I don't even think I could probably have you on 10 more times in the next week. And I still don't think I've covered enough of it because truly, look at what you've been a part of. Obviously, GWC, 4.14 million views. Obviously, now you're doing this on TikTok, 4,100 plus followers, 81,600 likes. You obviously, become the ambassador of this sport of wrestling. You obviously go out and travel to different states. You obviously, talk about the people that you've trained, Skrilla, Shianche Royal, and, all the different people that you've been a part of. I don't even think I could do it justice.
Yeah, you remind me. It's just what I can remember is what I can give you because there's so. Yeah, I mean, no, I just have had a long run, man, and I've been blessed to have it, and I'm blessed to be able to make it in one piece. And I think for GWC, for my work with GWC, I think one of my greatest achievements was just being able to introduce new aspects into the game of backyard wrestling. Like GWC Intensity was like literally we set a lot of trends in backyard wrestling, doing musical recaps after the match that we called the moments of intensity. We were the first to do that. Like EWA was the first to really bring replays in the backyard wrestling, but we really took it to the next level. We brought, in terms of production quality, I think we set new standards for the way backyard wrestling is presented. I think that there's even just little editing aspects and things we've done, the way we set up our shows, like GWC Intensity, like made a lot of firsts in backyard
You
wrestling.
even did a deathmatch documentary once upon a time. That was pretty forward.
Wow, I forgot about that. Wow, you did your research, man.
Well, I gotta tell you this. I always tell everybody this all the time. Sid, James jokes with this about me off the air. I have a background in politics, so I've worked in a lot of I don't want to say high level position, but on a campaign, I've done decent amount of things where I was I don't want to say a campaign manager, but just maybe the next person under. And my responsibilities were always looking up information to do the mailing. So you got all that stuff, the glossy, 5-6 figure pieces of mail you receive. A lot of times that was through my research. A lot of times it would be me formalizing the message. So through my background in that, since I'm a kid, I always knew I had to research things. So I know we've known each other for a while. I mean, I know you from TikTok, but I'm okay, let me look up who you are. And that's kind of why I looked at that. I was like, wow, he even did a deathmatch documentary. So yeah, it's, that's to answer your question, how I knew about you. Yeah.
There's a whole hilarious story about that documentary, but man, because oh my gosh, that documentary was shown at Georgia State University in Atlanta. And the one question everybody had for me in that documentary, because I that was before I really got better at journalism work or doing documentaries. So one of the guys in there, the Rampage, there's a whole there's a whole hilarious story to tell about that. I won't get into it now because it's a long, ridiculous story. But my God,
And you've been in the ring with guys like
yeah,
Asiego Jones and Justin
yeah.
Sane. I mean, you've had some you've been in there with some guys that have had really big careers. I mean, if you think about what you've done, it's just a really fascinating journey. And a couple of comments here. Let me get to here. My exposure with big names. I got that. Oh, this was the one. Unfortunately, UPW fired me because I wrestled for WC. And you know what, James Marshall? To hell with him. Because you're in WCE, and I guarantee you there's more people that know WCE than UPW, and I'll guarantee you that I'd much rather speak with WCE rather than UPW, so I think you're in the right place, and that's why you're the measuring stick of WC and maybe of the backyard. So there you go. The Steele versus Taylor was a bloody one, as both definitely got color or juice in that one. Yes, and we actually watched it here live on Sportswire, so hopefully Mr. Dragon doesn't not review it and doesn't spoil anything for us. So I can talk about his review on the air with Mr. Taylor, so stay tuned for that. And Mr. Allen says research is definitely important in wrestling, whether it comes to podcasts or interviews or just studying the business in general. And I always say it all the time, and I said this before we move on to a few final things, is that you can tell when somebody has an interview with somebody and they didn't do their homework. Or one of my biggest pet peeves, and you're going to appreciate this, one of my biggest all-time pet peeves is all these podcasters out there or interviewers that go, yeah, I have a podcast or I have a radio show. Do you want to come on? And they'll ask the wrestler about WWE, SmackDown, or fantasy booking or Busted Open. I'm like, well, you shouldn't be in the business of doing it. Just like if you're a wrestler and you can't do a clothesline, or you can't run the ropes, or you can't, do a claymore correctly, whatever it is, it's the same thing. Like if you're doing this, you got to be able to know what you're doing. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves, because wrestlers all the time go on these shows or interviews, and I'll listen to them, and the interviewer doesn't even know anything about them. Then why did you ask them to come on? So you should go back to your basement and go back to wanking off or whatever it was and get out of the business. But that's okay, because I'm on Sportswire, and I'm the only platform that will cover all wrestling matters and supports all wrestling and actually knows what I'm talking about. So that's here nor there. But I want to ask you two more final questions, Mr. Dragon. First one is, what are your goals in 2024 for the rest of the year?
My goals in 2024 is to try my hardest to catch up on this massive list of reviews that I've collected.
No, you're going to hear it today. You got TBW to cover more. You got James Marshall matches to go back in with Kodak Kid. You got NEW, Jake Matthews, my buddy. The guys in, DBW, VTW are out there. Everybody's out there. I
got to do Aaron Blaze. I haven't done any
Aaron Blaze. I got to tell you, Aaron Blaze, and I'm not just saying it, two guys you really should review, Aaron Blaze and D'Angelo LaFlame. D'Angelo LaFlame, this guy, he's wrestled a guy, Neff, a couple times in Resurrection Wrestling. Fantastic work. He just did work in a company in Alabama, the Alliance Wrestling League. He's going to be at the NEW Riot in the Ring June 1st. You definitely want to check that out. Aaron Blaze, he's wrestled Corey Lee in XCW. Chris Jones, who's a backyard wrestling legend out there in XCW. He just wrestled in the Underground Wrestling Alliance yesterday against Brett Anderson. He's wrestled a slew of guys. He's wrestled, Jackson Law, Captain Law. He's wrestled a lot of names that most of our audience would know. Maybe you kind of know, but don't know if that makes sense. Dalton Skull. Check out Aaron Blaze. I'm not just saying because he's so that's a guy, Aaron Blaze, I would really recommend if you could review anybody.
I've seen some of his work. I just never reviewed any of his matches.
And he's a traveling guy. He's in the lane. He's a different wrestler than Jack Delta, obviously, but he's in that lane. He's in that lane of travelers. He's that guy that's gone to different places. He's had success. He's cut his teeth in there. And, he's really had some great matches. He just wrestled Miano Diaz, who's the XCW world champion. He just wrestled yesterday against Brett Anderson, has his own promotion, YBW. He's a guy that I would really love to see. And D'Angelo LaFlame, I think is going to be in the independents in a year or two. I think he's to me another on the road of being a Jack Delta, but could probably go anywhere he wants. He's just... his talent, he's the energy of this sport. You might be the ambassador, he's the energy. What he does for his size, for what he does, his moves, he's a high flyer. He's fast, he's speedy. I mean, he can do it all. And also, James Marshall would like to say, not just know what you're doing, can you and your opponent do physically and mentally? That's a good
Yes.
point. And okay,
Yeah, there's a
go ahead,
lot
James.
of guys, like I said, it's just a lot of people that I have never done reviews for. Even though I've seen some of their work, I hear you guys like even I haven't seen anything like if there's some people I learn about watching your podcast. I mean, I've never seen Jack
Thank you.
Spade. I've never seen Jack Spade before.
Oh, Jack Spade is a guy. I got another guy. I want to wish him a happy birthday. It was this past Friday. Jack Spade is a guy that, I mean, he's great in the ring. He's got a good look. He can talk. I mean, he can talk your socks off. A guy that's, kind of in a way, like he's helped that company, Resurrection Wrestling, as an elder statesman. He's helped a lot of that younger talent in a way. I think that Jack Spade would be a guy to look at. Dustin Alexander would be another guy to look at. I think Dustin Alexander, he's wrestled Jimmy Controversy, beaten him. I think he'd be good. I think even, some guys out there, like the Blaze Ace Christian, Brandon Costelli, I like to give him a shout out. I love to see, Jeff Nova, you do more from the TF crew. Jeff Nova is a great talent. Guys like D Savage, Power Surge from New Underground Wrestling, Justin Abel Sane. I would like to, give them plugs. I have D Savage tomorrow night. So there's too many guys. I could have you all day with the list.
All day. I mean, we can go through everything like Triple W and the drink.
Well, Triple W. Let's just say, slow your roll on them. Let them go. You need to train them. You might have to teach them. It would be like right now, like they would be on the Fisher Price training wheels, and you'd have to be almost like they'd be your kids. You have to when I was a kid, and my mother told this story last week. It was almost like trying to ride a bike, and I couldn't ride the bike. With all due respect to the Triple W guys, and I love them, they're still on the Fisher Price training wheels.
All love. No, I know. All love.
To quote Heavy D, it's nothing but love. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that was old school for you, by the way. But at the end of the day, those guys, they need to stay on the training wheels for a little while longer. I think guys, again, D'Angelo LaFlame, Power Surge, D Savage, guys who've cut their teeth kind of like in the middle between the indies and the yard. Those are guys you would eat those guys up, especially D Savage, Power Surge, Justin Abel Sane, Tyson Spade, Jack Spade, and Resurrection Wrestling, my buddy Alan Michaels, James Marshall Moore, those are guys like that. And James Taylor, let's do all his stuff.
There are people that I know are not ready to really hit the review stage, as I say. And I do not critique on proper form. I'm looking at a lot of other factors. I recently, I had the distinct surprise of watching a Big Bad Silver Wolf match.
Well, that's the guy. I love the Big Bad Silver Wolf, but he's the guy that actually can't run the ropes right now. I love the guy. I know I'm going to get shot for it, but he did a match. He can't run the ropes. I mean,
there are things I saw that he does that work, and there are things
that you might want to say. Let's have that for a different podcast because
he's using a very old style for ground. He's using a very old style. It's like more 2004 kind of style, soft sell. I always call it soft sell, but it's not backyard wrestling. It's just a very old way of doing it.
Listen, I think that they're certainly the Fisher Price training wheels side. And again, I love them. I love Triple W. Love what those guys are doing. They're friends. But I think you need to focus on ready-to-order, ready-made wrestlers. And I think there are names, Jeff Nova, more Gabe Sayers, Angel Santiago, the Puerto Rican prince out there in TF crew, D Savage, Power Surge, more Jake Matthews, Tyson Spade, Jack Spade, Ronnie Brady, Dustin Alexander, Drake Gold Dragon, those types. D'Angelo
Fellow Dragon, by the way, okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. And
I just baited you on that one. I had to bait you out.
I'm trying to be very diplomatic because I realize I don't. You're obviously Mr. Copper Dragon. I don't want you to go into the firing squads. No. I'm okay with it, but the point is that I think there's a lot of great wrestling out there. Aaron Blaze would be number one on my list. Aaron Blaze. Review his matches. I mean, he's just Aaron's really he's a traveler. I think that would be the
striker. Guy. He's a good working striker. I've seen a lot of his.
He's really versatile in the ring. I've watched him work big guys, and he can actually take a slower big guy and kind of maybe carry them to think of like a Shawn Michaels and a Kevin Nash type of match. He just wrestled a guy who was kind of in that vein and for a yard style, did a really good job with that. He's also wrestled with faster guys and still kept up with a fast pace. He's wrestled guys that were like, at a slower space, but was still able to give a match that was still kind of in his style. So that's a guy to me that I would say is a traveler, accomplished guy that I think you would do, a lot of fun with for your audience and TikTok to see.
I love his trash talk in the ring. He has a good trash talk.
And he can talk well here because he was on the show yesterday. So he's a guy, he's ready to order. He's ready to order. He's 19. He's 19 with 6 years experience already. So think about that. He's 19, 6 years experience. He's probably wrestled like 250 times already. He's basically like, again, he's like doing what Jack Delta's done, but not as many companies. So like him, D'Angelo LaFlame, more Sean Jovi, more James Taylor. Absolutely, of course, we love James, but like those are the guys that come to mind. Like I said, D Savage, Power Surge, they've got a look that's like ready. Listen, real quick before we get to final thoughts, Power Surge and D Savage would have fitted perfectly in GWC. Those guys, the way they look, the way they move, they're already basically like ready to go into the indies. They've got a certain subset. I would love to see you kind of review some of those guys. Justin Abel Sane, Angel Santiago. You'll chuckle. He just did celebrity boxing. He just did celebrity boxing for the He's the TF Crew YouTube champion. So those are guys I'd love to see you do some more work with. Aaron Jones, by the way, from VTW. He's a friend of mine, but he's another guy. He's in the indies already. The more yard-based guys we have the names of. But okay, I think we're gonna have to close because I could talk to you a million times. We're gonna bring you back, James. Yeah, and I have to go back on the air in about like 90 minutes.
Oh,
James,
wow.
Yeah, I've got Resurrection Wrestling coverage coming up with Jacoby, who's wrestling D'Angelo LaFlame, by the way. Coming up
Jacoby,
here,
I'm familiar with Jacoby.
Jacoby's wrestling D'Angelo LaFlame in 2 weeks. So, there you have it. But, James, let me give you the floor. Let me give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say before we let Mr. Dragon skedaddle and maybe focus on reviewing more matches or just not come back? I don't know, whatever else.
Whatever floats his boat. I mean, he's a busy guy. We're all, the true talents are always busy. They've always got something going on. That's the way I'm going to look at it. I haven't plugged it on here yet, but my 2K company, my promo company, Promo Wrestling Federation, is up for sale. I'm actually selling the platform because I've been so busy building my brand, Tav Taylor, with my YouTube and my TikTok. I know you talk about it a lot, and whether people care or not, but I mean, I'm building it and it's continuously growing, so I'm having to focus all my energy onto that as I'm a full-time content creator now, and I cannot attend my other YouTube channel, which is Promo Wrestling Federation. 1,249 subscribers just for a 2K promo company alone. So if anybody's interested in talking about that, let me know. I've actually had a few already. I might have a buyer lined up, actually, so stay tuned to that. PWF is not going to be dying. It's just on the back burner for right now. But season 5's right around the corner. Then same James, same. Yeah, and Jovi, if you can say that all you want, but one of these days I'm going to have to hit you with a real stunner. I promise you that. I could sit here and talk trash all night long. I really could. But Tom, I really do appreciate you letting me come on, Mr. Copper Dragon. I'd love to talk to you for a few minutes afterward, but to see your honest thoughts about the match, not the rating, but your honest thoughts about that match, because I know you haven't. I don't think you've seen a backyard wrestling match like that in a long time, at least in the New Testament era.
All right, great stuff from you, James. And Mr. Dragon, I'm going to give you closing thoughts, and I'm going to close with somebody who wants to say quick 2-minute words, and then we'll say sayonara. So, Mr. Dragon, it is an absolute honor, and I turn it over to you. And I can't wait to see you here for your final words.
First of all, again, thank you so much for having me, Tom. I love this. I'm just gonna jump right quickly back into what I expect, with the star ratings for those people who just need that clarity, because that's where we're gonna be, over the next few months, is just doing ratings on matches. Guys, take care of your production. Your production is your backyard wrestling, your body of work, your testament to what we do. That is what it is. And the more and I expect to see, if you call yourself a wrestling fan, you call yourself a backyard wrestler, even if you look at yourself as semi-pro, whatever you want to call yourself, that needs to be reflected in your work. I am the consumer. I represent the person who's going to click on that video on YouTube. The off chance I just might find pique my interest, and I am telling you what I see when I click play on that player. I'm telling you, when I watch your matches from bell to bell, when I see every bump, every arm drag, everything, I'm watching it all. I'm not skimming over your matches, as some of you have learned the hard way that I don't miss anything. I'm watching everything. And I want you all to take care of what you do. You want to be the 7-star superstar. That has to show. I've got to see it. I mean, you guys.
Now you're sounding like my college professor.
I'm just giving it like it is, But yeah, reach for the stars, gentlemen. They're there. There's 7 stars total to be earned. And sometimes if the match just goes to, above 7 stars, you get a dragon medal. I do offer the dragon medals. So there is a place above 7 stars if a match just blows us all away. You know what I mean? If all of us are just, if I hear James just go nuts about it, you're going nuts about it, and I already gave it 7, it may get the dragon medal. Who knows? And I'm thinking about doing this. This could be a bombshell announcement, but in GWC, we had what we called the Medal of Intensity. And
yes.
Congratulations, by the way, to Skrilla, who earned it recently. It's for those people who really showed that devotion, that commitment to backyard wrestling, who really just put in the 10 years minimum, who really just helped improve the show, who, people like your Rad Hazards and everybody, I feel should be entitled to that medal as well. It is an actual physical medal that we in GWC, we vote us veterans vote as a group, as to who will receive one. But I may bring that into the wider zeitgeist of backyard wrestling, because backyard wrestling needs an honor to go along with this Hall of Fame that Bryce is doing here. Like, I would love to, help contribute to that. I am working to be a unifying force in this thing, and I'm here to assist both you and James as I can. I give the stars. Tom's going to give the honor and presentation here and everything, and James will be there to really get down into the grit of it, like I said, man, I'm just honored to be a part of all this, and I'll be there on TikTok as long as it lasts, and I'm asking everyone.
Yeah, I hope they stay TikTok. James was talking about it. I was like, why are they going to get rid of it? Because I actually may join TikTok now, just when I'm about to join it.
If not, I've already set up a YouTube page. I'm asking everybody just to jump on there. All 4,000 of you, just jump on there if you want to see more reviews, because I'm going to be transferring all my reviews over to that platform. As soon as I can. That's another thing I got to do this year. It's another thing that goes on is just to get all those videos over to the other platform. But that I have to format those videos for YouTube. So now I have to redo everything on the videos. It's taking time. So just give me time. I'm busy. I'm really busy these days. I have a lot of reviews to do. And like I said, it takes time to do the reviews. I have to go. I really analyze these matches.
Oh, I know the feeling doing interviews. I mean, trust me. Thankfully, my guest actually pushed the time back, so I'm like, woof, thank God. So it gives me a little bit of a break, and we just want to thank you so much for all that you do for us here. And obviously, again, we'll present this to you when we're off the air. These are the links here, and also I'm going to make the announcement here. Patreon, I'm going to subscribe to your Patreon page. I want to make that announcement right here on Sportzwire Radio that I personally want to invest in you. I support you for everything you do, and I want to make that announcement here before I get to a very, very quick surprise here before we sign off, that I am going to subscribe to your Patreon page. Thank you for all that you do, and I'm always one of the people, I don't just do it, I mean it. I don't just do it by words, I do it by actions, and I want to make sure that you get the support that you deserve, and you will have, when I'm off the air here, to the opportunity for me to subscribe to your Patreon page. That will be done In the meantime, support Mr. Dragon, all those links here. And before we sign off, he's got a quick few words. Got to be quick. Craven Rage, I don't know if you exist still. You're a figment of my imagination. I don't know if you are maybe planning retirement at some point, but I got a couple minutes here. And what would you like to say?
First and foremost, thank you, Tom, for bringing me back on here. And thank you, Copper Dragon, for yesterday. Thank you, Mr. James Taylor, for yesterday. First thing, Tom, Craven Rage does accept being in the Hall of Fame.
Okay, good.
You know, and I am back. So what that means that from now on, it's going to be a lot of more chaos. But second of all, Mr. Copper Dragon, I already spoke to the management and stuff like that and everything else, you know. So we're going to be doing the Hall of Fame. Our first inductee for the Hall of Fame is Mr. Tom Price.
Oh,
for everything.
Is this a joke?
No,
sure?
This is not a joke. This is real talk. You will be our first person in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, well, that's very nice of you. I really appreciate it.
Second of all, the second person is Mr. Copper Dragon.
Oh, if I'm going in with Mr. Dragon, I certainly now feeling a little bit better there. I was going to say, what's the catch here?
Third person that's going to be in the Hall of Fame is going to be the new GM, Mr. James Taylor.
Oh, wow. James Taylor, you're at WCE. I didn't know that either. Boy,
wow.
This is revelations here. I guess,
boy,
this is definitely getting real. This is not like in that other company you used to work for at 3 Initials. I guess you're in a promotion now, apparently, as a general manager. Boy, this is real. I guess we're not seeing you in Lafayette anytime soon. I guess we're not seeing you there, so we can forget about that. You're now in WCE. I mean, this is groundbreaking. I'm in the Hall of Fame. Copper Dragon's in the Hall of Fame, and James Taylor's back. He's actually back in wrestling. He's the general manager of Wrestling Championship Entertainment. I mean, this is... I didn't expect this one here. I was expecting more along the lines of like debauchery and it was going to go and fall like a mudslide here. But no, we've got it that WC's got a Hall of Fame. Craven Rage is back. He's accepting last night's induction into the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. Copper Dragon's joining me in the Hall of Fame. And James Taylor is the general manager of WC. I guess hope springs eternal after all. I guess a rising tide really does lift all boats.
You know, so yes. I did go home, but I'm coming back as something different.
Well, I guess this is quite a way to end Sportswire Radio tonight. And Craven Rage is back. WC's got a Hall of Fame. I'm the first person to be inducted into it. Copper Dragon is second, but I'll certainly happily, let Mr. Dragon go in ahead of me. Doesn't matter. And James Taylor is back in wrestling. He's the general manager of Wrestling Championship Entertainment. I guess you never know. I knew nothing about it. This is definitely this is a shoot. This is definitely something that I can promise you wasn't choreographed, and quite a way to end tonight's show. And Sean Jovi even said okay, and never say never. And even James Taylor is surprised, and I guess purple is a color. And want to say hello to my friends over in the great state of North Dakota, Bismarck, North Dakota, for Legendary Backyard Wrestling, another great company that Mr. Dragon should check out on the trampoline. They've got 1,500 plus subscribers, and I've got coverage for them Tuesday night, 10 o'clock, with a gentleman, Scary Terry, who just wrestled at their golden ticket show against my guest previously, who was attacked famously on the air on Sportswire Radio, and James and I were speaking about that. So that was the Psychotic Freak, and we're going to be here with Scary Terry, but until then, this is definitely one for the ages. So I guess you'll have to stay tuned for May 8th for Sean Jovi's return to Sportswire Radio, 8:45 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:45 p.m. Central Standard Time, because I'm going to have to talk about this news here. James Taylor's in WCE. We've got a Hall of Fame, and Craven Rage is back. And, gentlemen, I guess we'll be talking more. And congratulations, Mr. Dragon. As a matter of fact, you actually got inducted into not one but 2 Hall of Fames tonight. Kind of a historic thing. Wow. I mean, I guess, you know what? You didn't get appreciated after all, and now you just did in the span of one day. It just took just 2 hours to be in 2 Hall of Fames, be named the ambassador of the Hall of Fame, and I guess who knows what else can happen. So there you have it.
Wow. I'm stunned, man.
I guess we're all going to have to say, like the old Batman cartoons, tune in next week, and we'll have to find out what happens. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, my name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, your voice of all wrestling, where all wrestling matters. Now you might have to tune in at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time tonight for Jacoby of Resurrection Wrestling to talk about his match against D'Angelo, the Flame of Resurrection Wrestling, but also this fallout. And we were joined here by Craven Rage, who's back in WC. He's now back in the Sportswire Radio Hall of Fame. He made these announcements that I'm going into the WC Hall of Fame alongside Copper Dragon, and James Taylor is the new general manager of WC, and I'll be back with Sean Jovi Wednesday night, 8:45 p.m. to talk about that. But until then, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio, all wrestling matters, and follow Copper Dragon and all those links here and James Taylor's links, and thank you, everybody.